Yo, showtime, showtime!
What's going on?
4, 3, 2, 1!
There we go. So now I'm turning all of this stuff back on, and when we flip over, can you see us now? Turn up the volume.
Yes.
Hang on a moment. No, I know what it is. Output, monitor, and output. Does that work now? Does that work, testing?
Yeah, you're just very quiet. Turn up the volume.
Okay. Oh, I see what you mean. Here we go. Okay. Is this helping now? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, it was on low before just because of feedback. So, alright, so now we are properly live here. Hello everyone out there. Sorry about that before. We're running a new machine, and you know how these things work. Machines, and we're supposed to be hackers, and machines don't like us. So, we're going to be here right now. For all of us who are tuning in on the live stream right now, this is DEFCON 201. We are a we're a subsection of DEFCON groups, which is a whole, all across the United States and the world, various hackers meet up in lieu of when DEFCON's going to happen, which will happen this year in August, called Safe Mode Online this year. Normally we meet third Friday every month, like now, and so happens to be also Juneteenth, which we couldn't pick a better day in order to do something like this on. But we normally meet in person at this amazing sandwich shop called Subculture, which currently is open now with an outdoor venue. We will be there next month in July. But because of COVID and we're tired and the police right now likes to beat anyone that has a face, we've decided since March when COVID started to do all these online streams, and so we're on our online meeting right now. Just a quick introduction of ourselves. I am Side Pocket, one of the co-founders. The other co-founder is G.I. Jack. Jack, do you want to go on and say a few things? Or?
Hi, I am G.I. Jack. I'm the other co-founder. It's great. It's great for you all to be here. We are really excited to have you all here, and happy Pride Month, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we have honestly, every time we keep doing these, particularly online, I feel like the speaker list keeps getting better and better. And one of our members, Cells, arrived, and so we would like to go things first. I will say, just because I didn't know if Tech Learning Collective was going to come in or not, we would like to. We're trying to feature this whole meeting's basically we're featuring LGBTQ and queer hackers and all the crazy awesome projects they work on, as well as their own experiences as being a computer or software or tech person who is someone who's part of the LGBT community. So we want to just start off with Tech Collective, if they could quickly introduce themselves and explain what they do for a couple of minutes. So Tech Learning Collective, are you out there?
Yeah, hi, can you hear us?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thanks so much for having us here. It's first of all, acknowledgement, of course, to Juneteenth, right? The anti-slavery holiday that we should probably be doing more of and a lot more for, just as a nation and as a world. And also Pride Month, which is great. LGBTQ Pride. Tech Learning Collective is a queer-run radical technology school, and we focus primarily on a security-first infrastructure curriculum, primarily to train folks who have politically motivated agendas in how to do and support activist efforts through technology. So that's sort of a a large mandate, and it covers a lot of topics. But effectively, if you go to techlearningcollective.com, you'll see a set of workshops, courses. I think the next one that we're doing is on clearing away the clouds, which is our sort of basics of networking workshop. We talk a lot about the OSI model, layer 2, layer 3, networking, this kind of thing. And this leads all the way through to just sort of basic network skills, all the way through to network attacks. So ARP cache poisoning and DNS spoofing, DHCP hijacking, and this kind of stuff. So I don't know if you have any questions. We're happy to answer a few while we're here for the next couple of minutes. But that's basically us. If you haven't already checked us out, techlearningcollective.com gives you all the details.
Just because we've been on, doing the screen share, I'm actually right now on your website here. I wanted to do a couple of questions before we go into our amazing first speaker. So first of all, how did all of you folks started out with Tech Learning Collective?
Yeah, it's a. I'm gonna give you the bridge story since it's kind of got a long history. It actually been around for about 4 years, believe it or not. And the first version of Tech Learning Collective was just sort of a private mutual self-education group. So a bunch of folks who had some history in activism of one form or another, whether that be back in like the 1999 era with the WTO protests, or all through the Occupy era in 2011 or so, all the way through to some of the anti-racism protests that happened after Eric Garner and Michael Brown were murdered by police in the mid-2010s. We're basically like, well, we need to do more with technology. A lot of folks in our social justice movement globally and locally have sadly, I think, mistakenly conflated technical skill and technical education with something those capitalists do, something those oppressors do, and not something we can use. And so a few of us who were not of that mindset got together and were like, let's get good at this. Let's get actually really good at this and see what we can use with it for our own movement organizing. And so that's how it started, actually in Brooklyn in about 2015 or so, maybe even a little bit before that. I think early 2015. I got involved personally in 2016, and we sort of realized that after the Trump election, there was a lot of requests for folks who needed, who were taking things like encrypted communications and digital safety a lot more seriously than they were before, which of course is a little bit too little, too late, but that's how humans work. So from there, we formalized this Train the Trainers program, which over the next couple of years, as people started to apprentice under the original group, got a little larger and a little bit more ambitious, and this sort of resulted in a reimagining of what Tech Learning Collective would be in 2019 when we started doing online events. And as I think you recall, the Hackers Next Door conference that we invited some of you to, I remember seeing some of you at, which was a gathering of about 100 people in the...
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a bit of a two full days, 25 plus speakers, and lots of workshops. And I think you all folks did a lockpicking sort of side hallway side like thing, which was great. Side pocket, there you go. That's what I'm trying to say. Side pocket helped run it. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and there was always that. We've just kind of been trying to do new things ever since, and so now we run these workshops almost every other day. I think, as mentioned, the next one's on Saturday. I think the one after that's going to be on Monday. Then we're going to do another one, I think, on Thursday. And some of these are free, some of these are paid. Some of the free upcoming events that we have are Mr. Robot's Hacker Happy Hour, featuring hacks from the show Mr. Robot. We'll talk about that. We'll grab a drink and such. We're also doing a Backdoors and Breaches free play night, which is a game that is often played in the cybersecurity industry. If you've ever been part of a digital forensics and incident response team, or you ever are looking at sort of cyber threat analysis, tabletop role plays, these are things that consulting companies actually do with C-level and IT folks at companies to try to get them in the mindset of how do you respond to a cyber threat incident. And so we're going to play that game as well. Anyone's welcome to come and sort of try it out. It's very beginner friendly. It's very minded towards education, not on competition. So I think that's happening on Sunday or maybe Monday. I'm not entirely sure. I have to look at the calendar. But the calendar is right there up at techlearningcollective.com/events.
Okay. Yes, and I can attest to real quick that I've been to a couple of their workshops and events, and they really not only describe things really well, but they truly start off at a very beginner level and then ramp up. I guess one last thing, real quick for Tech Learning Collective is in the best summary that you can, like 5 sentences, 8 sentences, can you quickly describe the thing that I know bugs you folks the most about using Signal and that you need an actual phone number with that? Do you want to detail a bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that it bugs us very much. It's just that a lot of people, for understandable reasons, don't have a full conception of the tools that they're using. Right? These are complex things ultimately, and it's hard to really understand all of the implications, not just of using them, but of how they work. And so a lot of people think that Signal, right, is requiring a phone number, but actually all it really needs is an SMS capable number, which is to say you need to be able to receive a text message one time in order for Signal to register your account. But your account is not really your phone number. It's just sort of a convenient addressing system. And so you can actually have, like for example, on my personal phone, I actually have a couple of different Signal numbers. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to give away my actual number, my actual phone's number, right, the one associated with my SIM card, to people who I don't necessarily trust or who I just want to sort of communicate with casually. So there's a blog post that I think you went over on our website that explains how you can register a Signal account that's not associated with your own phone number. And you can do this in a number of different pseudonymous or more anonymous ways. And that's one of the things that we'll be covering in our upcoming Signal workshop I think it's in early July. So you want to know more about that, come to our workshop in July.
Hold on, I actually think that's a false dichotomy. You can get a separate number for Signal. For example, mine is a separate number, but that you still have to have a phone number that can receive SMSs. That
doesn't have to be your phone number. It just has to be a number.
But hold on, but that usually means associating a real life identity in most countries, where I've had to present passport or documentation to get a local number. Even here in the United States, it's usually collected. So saying that Signal doesn't require your phone number, that I find that's a very misleading way to put it, because your information is still available. You can still be traced back to the original person.
2 points. One, come to Jersey City. You could get a SIM card for $40 cash, no questions asked.
I also
Put the cash on the table, and you get an activated card.
Which we can talk about afterwards, that I actually do have a phone that I used to have a number for, and despite the number being expired and not in use, Signal still completely works on that phone through Wi-Fi. It's a very complicated thing out there, because also software changes over time. But I just wanted to ask one last thing on the Tech Learning Collective. I know you have an upcoming thing that involves a class for African American activists to get involved. Could you quickly explain that, and then we will go on to our first speaker?
I think what you're referring to is just the Signal workshop that we have. Okay. We're offering that at a slightly discounted rate. It is a paid workshop. It's a 2-hour deep dive on how Signal works and what to do with it and how to use it safely. So that's probably what you're referring to. One of the things that we suggest, if you, for example, want to use Signal slightly more anonymously, is that, I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of these sort of disposable SMS numbers that you can get from any number of service. You can grab them via Tor. You get an SMS number for a short period of time, and that's one way that, for example, why we don't say that you need to use your phone number. The numbers that we use, for example, for a Tech Learning Collective Signal account, and for, as I said, I do this myself, right? It's not my number. It's not even associated with an SMS number in the country that I'm in. It's just the number that I used to receive an SMS one time, and now that's a valid Signal address with a Signal account. That's just like any other Signal account that I use on a regular basis. So it is very possible to do this in a relatively easy, there's this sort of little workaround. And I hear that Signal is also working towards not requiring phone numbers at all for their user account system, which is great. Hopefully that'll come to the masses in the next year or two.
Awesome. Any final things before we go to our first speaker real quick, like a sentence or two?
No, thank you so much for having us. We can't stick around for very long, so we appreciate you offering the spotlight to us. And again, if any folks are interested, please just check out techlearningcollective.com to learn more.
Yep, and that's our website. Is at techlearningcollective.com. So thank you for you folks for detailing all of that. So now that we have that awesome highlight out of the way, it's hard to kind of say out of the way without sounding like we're throwing someone. But we want to introduce our first speaker here, who now I'm going to give presenter privileges to. A little bit of background. So when I invited her to this, I actually had to explain to her what a polymath is. Because she actually didn't know, I learn stuff every day too, she didn't know what it is, but that's the best way I can think of to describe her. She does, I guess she's kind of like a superhero where daytime she does audio engineering work, and then at nighttime she runs one of the coolest, most awesome shows that you could see in Brooklyn at Lucky 13's called Middle Grade Burlesque, as well as I've seen her sing opera, I've seen her do reading story time stuff. She just does so many different things. And a while ago I asked if she would like to do, because I know about our engineering background, a topic of her choice on that for us. And then when we realized, most of the speakers that we invited are going to be on the LGBTQ spectrum, do you want to come on for this? And thankfully so much she said yes. So without further ado, I present to you, and I'm going to probably screw this up, Queen Signora.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all. Hello, hello, hello. It is so wonderful to be here. Shout out to DEFCON 201 for having me. I'm very honored to be speaking amongst a fabulous, brainy panel. So ladies, gents, and everyone in between, thank you all very much. It's so nice to virtually meet you all. So as Side Pocket was describing, I am Queen Signora. I am a Latinx queer burlesque producer, audio engineer, and since the whole focus is tech people, I will be presenting essentially a beginner to intermediate crash course on live sound basics, specifically detailing the importance of EQ, feedback, and bridging that with acoustical consideration. So for those of all y'all who are familiar with this world, shout out to all my engineers. Bless you for your patience, as again, to reiterate, this is a beginner intermediate basic fly through. So let's treat this like a dab of acid and see what happens. So with that in mind, so live sound basics, I do have a presentation. Let's see if it plays. Great. So when we think of live sound basics, what do we think of? Well, without being too cheeky, we think of sound that is live, right? Well, what does that mean exactly? What that means is essentially you have an event take place in a variety of spaces, outside, inside, and the job is to then provide amplification for what is occurring. So in a nutshell, that's what live sound does. It can be a panel of speakers, it can be a concert and whatnot, but the main goal is to provide liveness to what is happening. That is the absolute basics. So sounds pretty straightforward, right? Who does provide these basics? Well, person such as myself, a live sound engineer. And what do we do other than be alive and be an engineer? No, more than that. We are someone who essentially takes a variety of sound sources, whatever event that is happening. We take said sound sources and we blend and balance all that is provided with us at this event via a mixing console. I don't know if you can actually still see me while my presentation is going, but here's an example of said mixing console, or a desk. That's another way to refer to that little gem right there. And through said desk, we then take those sounds as we balance them, and depending on what desk it may be, it could be digital or analog. Here's a baby analog. We then equalize those sounds. We route said equalized sounds and add all that goodness to them to amplification, which then goes through loudspeakers, which then goes to your ears, wherever you are sitting and standing. Make sense so far? Since it's virtual, I'm going to assume a 5-second nod for yes, because I can't interact. Great. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. Now, let me say that as I go further into this, you're going to hear me refer to assume that we live in perfect sound world. Why do I say that? Well, take an example of what I'm going to talk about right now. There are technically two types of live sound engineers. All right, so before I dive into that exactly, as you can see on this beautiful schematic, which I did not draw at all, thank you, the internet, for providing said schematic. We have at the bottom the house. For those of you who don't know, Any venue where your audience will be sitting to participate in this awesome event that you are engineering, they are sitting in what is referred to as the house. If you've ever been a part of pre-production or you've ever heard the phrase, oh, on deck, that is referring to the stage. That is referring to where all this awesomeness that you will be engineering is taking place. So now back to the two types of engineers. So in a perfect sound world and in this perfect venue where you have that amount of space, both on stage and in the house, you would have two engineers, one being the front of house mix engineer. So as I explained with what I'm referring to, it is our job as the FOH engineer to take what is happening, on stage and provide a mix for the house, for the audience, right? And in perfect sound world, you would have a monitor engineer as well, who will not be on with you, not with you in the back of the house, but they will be on stage. Whether it's right or left, doesn't necessarily matter. But monitor engineers, if there is a setup in perfect sound world, of course there is, they will have a vantage viewpoint where they can see you, whoever's on stage, communicate with them, and they are providing a mix for who is on stage. Whether that is through the use of in-ear monitors, if you're super fancy, and in perfect sound world, we're super fancy, right? And we have the financial capabilities to have that, awesome. If not, you're going to use speakers or wedges, as they are known as, all right? Makes sense so far? Nothing too crazy, pretty standard. Again, this is assuming we live in perfect sound world. So now we're going to look at scenarios. We're going to do some more show and tell. Did I take this picture? No, bless the internet. So what does this festival situation going on right here with all these beautiful line arrays, as you see, and what by line arrays, I'm referring to the literal lines of speakers that are hoisted up and rigged by fabulous individuals, both men and women, and everyone in between. And this little situation, Bob's first garage band, who I will not be hiring to play at my wedding, but nonetheless, these people, and a screenshot of my tears. Just kidding, that's not my tears. That would more than likely be the Motley Crue show that I would have been seeing. So what do all these situations, apart from the fact that none of them will be occurring this year, so apart from the fact that they do not exist this year because of COVID-19, sad news, but they will be back, right? So whether it's Bob's Basic Garage Band, a festival, or an epic concert, you need the most number one concept, and that is, as I keep getting excited and toggling to the next slide to indicate, basic signal flow. And by basic, I don't mean like basic bitch. I mean basic in the sense of where and how all the magic happens. Because again, all those situations, and as I prefaced earlier with being a live engineer and live events, it doesn't matter whether it's a panel of speakers or it's a 5-piece band or it's an orchestra. As an engineer, it is your job to know the basic signal flow, how this works, what makes the magic happen. It's not magic. Sorry to burst your bubble for those who believe that. It's a little bit of magic. You do need to believe in yourself. That's also necessary too, but you need to have the grasp of what is happening. So no matter what is taking place on your stage and what your engineer, you start with a sound source that is then needs to be amplified. Well, 10 times out of 10, you're going to be using a microphone. So in this little diagram, which I also did not draw, hooray for the internet, there you see that it starts with the microphone. Now for a live setup for this diagram, they are kind of missing one little extra step right before the mixer. You have the microphone, which is then connected with an XLR cable, which is then going to go to a snake or to a box of inputs, so to speak. That snake is a list of channels with corresponding cables that will then be connected and is routing said signal, whatever is happening from this microphone, to your mixer. So it goes microphone, cable, cable, snake, snake, mixer. From said mixer, then goes to your amplifier, then that goes to your speakers, and it goes to your ears. Makes sense? makes sense. Let's assume it makes sense. I believe in all of y'all, by the way. And like I said, for some of y'all who already know this, bless you for your patience.
Just want to quickly interrupt to let people know on stream that if anyone has any questions, I can read the chat so you can mention them in here. And when she's done with her speaking at the end, I will read those questions to her.
And hopefully I'll be able to answer all of them, whatever they may be. So how this happens, it's with basic signal flow. So mic, snake, mixer, amplifier, speakers. On top of that, one of the things that I very much think goes under the radar in terms of being a live engineer, especially if you're freelance, meaning you don't have a house or theater or specific venue that you're always at, is that you need to have a mental preparation of what you're stepping into. What do I mean by that? Outside of basic signal flow, you need to recognize that there will always be differences, especially if you're freelance. So remember, in perfect sound world, like I said, you may not always walk into a situation where you will get a monitor engineer. One of the houses that I work at, I am both front of house and monitor engineer. Our desk, when I first got there, we started on an 8-channel Mackie analog. It is now upgraded to a 24-channel Soundcraft GB4. Amazing. It's still analog though. So that's their setup. And our wedges are crap, but we make do. So with that in mind, you have to very much just be prepared to set aside your bullshit as a person and focus on the goal of putting on a killer show or conference or whatever it may be. So you need to consider all the things that are out of your control, primarily being the venue space itself. That I cannot stress enough. And when we go, as I dive into sound check and whatnot, you have to very much have the integrity of the space that you're in mind, because what works in one space and outside and so on and so forth does not, no two spaces are alike. In the same way that no two people are alike, no two spaces are alike for so many reasons. So, know basic signal flow, set aside your bullshit. Two main things I would like to say. So now we move into, let's assume again, perfect sound world, right? So you are the engineer, you've met your client, you've gotten an idea of the space, where your booth is, all that other good stuff. You would ideally, in perfect sound world, receive this adorable stage plot. Is that not the cutest thing, or is it not the cutest thing? Some are actually cuter, honestly. As silly as this is so necessary, y'all. I cannot stress enough as to the blessing of being given a stage plot, because organization is key. Being in a live setting and working as a live engineer, you have to be prepared for things to go wrong or things to get messy, things. So any type of organization on the smallest scale, such as a stage plot, goes a long way. Because look, your job's essentially visually done for you at this point. It totally denotes where your kit's going to be. In this case, this is a band. You have your singer at the edge of the stage, whatever your client wants, whatever's being presented. This gives you a visual idea of where you're putting your stuff, where things are going. See, and in this perfect sound world, they even have a monitor engineer. Look how cute is that? So that's where they are. And these rectangles here, right in front and surrounding the players, that is what I was referring to as wedges, or your monitors. In a more fancy schematic, so to speak, you would see, instead of wedges, because perfect sound world, like the garden, for example, these would probably be IEMs, in-ear monitors. That little logo would look like a radio or an iPod. Remember iPods? Haha, 2020. But that's what they would look like, that if you wanted to see a visual representation of that on your stage plot. So, and that monitor land is meant for, again, in perfect sound world, your monitor engineer, should that be the case. So all the necessities of basic signal flow, knowing your acoustical space, and you're given the stage plot, you start to set things up. And I could not begin to also stress the importance of this next segue, which is going into feedback and whatnot, but the opportunity of a line and sound check. If you get one, for the love of Christ, use it. Utilize it. It is not always a given, whether it's for the sake of how the venue scheduled the program or who was in charge, the production manager, whatever flub may happen where you didn't get a sound check. Don't get me wrong, you can totally still have a successful event without a line or sound check, but it goes so much further. So if you are an engineer, and especially for those who are starting out, and you are allotted a sound check, Carpe sees that and do it, because it will help you, first of all, further understand the acoustical space that you're in, and it will help you troubleshoot, hopefully, no problematic or minor problematic issues of whatever it is that you're presenting. So with that, it then ties into our next segue as to why sound check and line checks are important. And before I dive into this next topic of feedback, we'll go back to our little cute bobbleheads there before completely segueing over. For those who don't know, the purpose of a line check is once you have set up your visual, you then want to just check the line. That's the funny thing with audio, is most of the time what it suggests, that's what it is when you describe it. It is checking the lines. You are checking the connections to make sure that you have patched in whatever microphone or DI box or what have you properly. So if you've plugged in your microphone for vocalist A, it's going to channel 1 and it comes out of channel 1. When you unmute it, you've done amazing. You are halfway through it. So that's the purpose of the line check. The sound check is the more nitty gritty of actually working with your talent to, what's comfortable for them on stage, what they want, any effects, things of that nature. And the big thing, now going back or forward, shall I say, is this is the time why sound checks are important, to see where and when feedback is occurring. So what is feedback? In this case, it is not constructive criticism, although we will get plenty of that throughout our job. In this case, what I'm referring to in feedback is known as an amplified sound, or defined as an amplified sound from a loudspeaker that then enters the system via an open mic. And by open, I mean a channel that's not muted, a mic that is set up when you're doing the sound check, and then is amplified back into the sound system. So essentially a loop is occurring, and not a good loop-de-loop. So for those outside of having an out-of-body experience of me trying to describe what acoustic feedback is, it is also known as the sustained, awful ringing tone that we associate when we hear, sometimes movies will put it on the, but it's also a low rumble too. It varies. It has personality too. Feedback has personality, y'all. So even more important as to why you need to utilize your sound check, because you need to be able to address where and when things could arise and cause further problems. So, and feedback is very much then linked into when you are utilizing your sound check time and checking your signal flow and whatnot, is then going into equalization. So, but before that, I get so excited in my geeking out, so I'm like getting ahead of myself here. Before we get back it up. I don't fish, but let's reel it back in for myself. So how to prevent feedback on the most basic level. As I mentioned, I will get into EQ, but apart from EQ, is the first point of this couldn't be any more important unless I put extra bold lettering on it, italicized it, and then some underlined it. Mic placement in feedback prevention goes so far, more than I think most engineers, both new and well-seasoned, would like to admit. If you have your mic, first of all, you never, of course, basic rule of thumb, want to have your mic source directly in front of the speaker of any sort, because that, for one, will for sure cause feedback. But also, mic placement is very much key in terms of mic usage, mic technique. So one of my main houses that I work at is Brooklyn Music School. And when there's not guest events, I work with children. And by children, I mean anyone very much from ages 3 to, let's say, even young adults. And I will also, let me side note and say that God bless MTV for only the fact that it brought visuals to music, so to speak, but also damn MTV, because music videos, as we know it, do not display proper performance technique. Let's just generalize it that way. And specifically, mic technique. This is awful. Please do not do this. This is not gangster. You do not get more street cred points by holding the grill of the mic. It sounds awful, and it makes our job a painstaking nightmare. It's not cute. It doesn't work. It causes more problems than it looks charming. One and first and foremost. The second thing is also distance. As much as, you know, if you want to believe that you're Aretha Franklin, great. But you being this far it's not going to do anything. This is not magic. And I very much take the time when I work with kids to explain to them that this is not magic. It's only magic based on what you put into it. And especially for kids, I have to explain that because the difference of that distance and not eating the microphone is crucial. So mic placement is super importante for one. So outside of mic placement, the one thing with feedback prevention is, as I said, feedback has personality, right? Well, how do you meet and greet such personality? Well, one is EQ. And what is EQ? Other than two letters put together, making a cute little sound? No, it is short for equalization. And equalization is accomplished through medium of an equalizer. That was my Dr. Evil voice for a second. So an equalizer is a signal processor that essentially takes a sound source's existing set of frequencies, and depending on what desk you're using, doesn't matter whether, you know, graphic, parametric, but you then have the capability to take your, usually in this case, for those who can see, it goes from high mids, low mids, and lows. This is only a 3-band EQ on this tiny little device here. But either way, the point is, and with an equalizer, is that you're processing a range of frequencies, and you are taking the time to sweep. And by sweep, that's referring to the action of using the knob on your desk there. And you are, I like to think of this as coloring. EQ is very much like coloring. So every sound source is like a blank canvas that comes with its own colors. And so in order to create the best picture of that sound source and to have it look its best, if you want to think of it that way, is you are taking that set of colors, that palette, those frequencies, low mids, highs, and you are taking shape. And you are most of the time in live settings for what we do for our intensive purposes, especially for acoustical consideration. Most of the time we're doing subtractive EQing. And what that means very much is what it suggests. You are taking away certain frequencies. Kind of a rule of thumb, as I found in a variety of spaces that I've worked at, is that if you take out, it's best, especially for vocalists, to just really take out a lot of that low end for muddy reasons and for a variety of other reasons. So in a nutshell, EQ, as I mentioned, is the ability to boost, attenuate, take away frequencies of a sound source, all right? And this is very much important in tuning your room, in finding that acoustical consideration for every space that you have. Because, as I mentioned, every space is not the same. There is no two spaces that are alike, and especially, you know, what you EQ in Carnegie Hall is not going to be what I EQ to a tiny bar, just things of that nature. So the easiest approach to EQing and tuning a room is taking a song that you know very well. And I mean very well because you want, ideally, as an audio engineer, you have the capability to, of course, recapture those favorite bits of warmth and coolness in a given soundscape. So that's why you take a song that you're so attuned to, unintended, absolutely, to be able to then know how certain frequencies travel best. So that is what I mean by tuning the room, and that's going to help you adjust for everything else in whatever your program is and whatever is being presented. Makes sense? Makes sense. Okay, great. So, why it's important? Well, not to beat a dead horse, but because it's going to save your life in terms of fighting that feedback. You know, certain frequencies do not just respond well in a given room, in a certain acoustic situation. So, and as I mentioned, most of the EQing that we do as engineers in live is corrective, meaning that we're trying to, as I used that comparison earlier with painting, we're trying to portray the proper sounds, the qualities of that sound source. So, and to also allow, especially when you have more than one person or three people, I would say, then it allows for better blending of all those sound sources. So again, that's why, going back to with tuning the room, you take something very familiar and you put forth what you know for the betterment of the whole. So corrective EQ is one side of EQing. Creative EQ is more of what you would, I think, run into in terms of recorded sound, you know, because you've got more options to play around. I've definitely done events and I have some clients who they want their voice to be muddy. They want what's called like a telephone EQ. So when you're essentially cutting 250 and adding 3 or whatever components of frequencies to create a different timbre, to change for a moment or whatever it may be. So those are the two types of EQs that you will run into, is corrective and creative. So that is why it's important, and that is why it helps with feedback. And I think, is that just a random slide? Oh, yep, it is. All right. So that was essentially my last slide, so to speak. So what that has to do with, again, was a lot to backtrack is what I was talking about. Let me take a sip of my coffee. Stay hydrated, y'all. So in the basics of live sound setup, you need to understand basic signal flow. You need to understand that every space is not going to come with all the equipment, and you need to be able to adjust and work through as quickly and efficiently as possible in order to produce the event at its finest and fullest. And I mean, one example I can give as to kind of that talks about all these things with both feedback prevention and EQing and my acoustical consideration is same house that I work at Brooklyn Music School. We had a guest event, and first, in talking about the space itself, that specific hall, it's an old playhouse that was built in the 1920s, and it is very live. And as a rule of thumb, most automatically live spaces are very difficult to work with enhanced amplification because that's what they're built for. They're built for natural amplification. They're built to have a conversation carry as if nothing. So it's very much important, again, even more so, to take consideration when you have a live space as that. So in my example, I had Nels Klein from Wilco apparently lives in Fort Greene, which is right where Barclay is, and that's where my theater is. And he wanted to put on a Jimi Hendrix tribute, and he brought along with him Sean Lennon and Captain Kirk Douglas from the Roots. Awesome, very lovely gentlemen. And because all three of these gentlemen are epic guitar players and our space is very live, I have to be the considerate asshole to go tell them to turn their amps down, okay? Because who am I to go tell Sean Lennon, hey, can you turn your shit down, please? But I had to, because otherwise, one, the event would not sound as well as it did for a variety of reasons. And the other thing that I didn't necessarily touch upon is, especially when you have guitar situations, when you have amps on stage, and I have the capability to mic set amps and feed it into the system, less is more, y'all. Loud does not mean good. Loud does not mean that it is pristine. So for all you guitarists, I get it. You want to shred, and it's awesome, and I will ride that solo with you. But if I can't do my job in helping all the ambience come together, it just sounds awful. So, and because of, as I said, all live space that I was in, their type of equipment, and thankfully, and being polite and professional about it, we were able to get through it, have a nice day, and, you know, shake hands and be on our merry way. So what it comes down to for my talk is know your basics and set aside your bullshit, and you will have a successful live event.
Before I unmute all for people ask questions here, I hope people can hear me. I just want to mention that Lady Tell in chat said that she was so here for the rant about the mic technique, and also everyone keeps asking us to pay you to do all of our audio for that, which I wouldn't be against. When we go back to physical live stuff, especially since there's been talks about trying to do a hacker convention in New Jersey, I will definitely factor that in here. But
Absolutely.
I
was going to mention the conference. Yeah,
before I open up to quick questions, we'll take a few. I want to ask. I don't know how long Echo is able to be here for, which is in conjunction for our two people who are wearing fursuits. While I have seen people party in fursuits for 72 hours straight, I do know from mascotting that it gets sweaty stuff. Are you guys fine with for like Echo to go after this, and then you guys go? You're good? Okay.
Also, fine. No problem.
So I'm gonna unmute right now. And does anyone have any questions or comments?
I was gonna quickly say I thought you were your problem with MTV was they don't actually play music videos. It's just reality TV shows. So he's like, yeah, music television. Like, what music? It's all about like.
Well, it is. It killed the radio star. There's so many problems, but my main point for today's purpose was.
I'm glad you mentioned feedback, because that's a problem that I was having last time with my whole mess setup here.
No, it goes a long way. It's not constructive criticism.
So
it's
we have a question from a person named Helminster, which is, what is the most common corrective action you have to take?
For EQ?
I'm assuming so.
Okay. Words. Hi. Probably the most corrective action I have to take in terms of EQ is I mentioned always minimize your low frequencies, your low mids. It just takes out the muddiness, and that's specifically for vocals. And again, unless it's a choice or unless that's the type of voice that you're working with. But when in doubt, the easiest correction to make, especially for live, is to minimize the muddiness. So really minimize those low ends, cut some low mids. You don't ever want to take everything out to where it sounds thin, but you just want to make sure at the very least nothing sounds boomy, again, unless that's a choice and that's what your talent is asking. So quick, easy correction is just always take out the lows. And my other little hack that I found is also take down a little bit of like your high mids, so around 5K-ish, I'd say. Because again, depending on who is speaking and what their timbre is, you don't want to thin it out, but you don't want it to be so bright that it's gross. That makes sense?
That makes complete sense. I do want to mention before I ask Michael a question that this is the spiel, and you might see a little bit of this behind the scenes since we're on the desktop, that during the stream and all the way up until 4th of July, you're probably wondering if you're on the live stream what that bar is above us that our go-to meeting people can't see, but it is on our stream. As we mentioned in the beginning, before we had to cut out, we are, yes, thank you, Blade. We are raising, we're doing a fundraiser right now for the Trevor Project, which is an awesome group of people who do LGBT, who support LGBTQ youth, as especially been vocal with Black Lives Matter, people of color, and you probably have heard of them through the Trevor Lifeline, which is for at-risk LGBTQ people who are contemplating suicide or in extreme depression. They also have a bunch of other utilities that they made for free and publicly available to help people, because right now no one's mental health is great right now. So we figured this would be a good thing and a great way to also lead up to 4th of July, America's birthday, yay. And we've been doing shockingly well. We've had enough people donated. We're at $280, meaning that by the time we get to July 4th, see, I'm not in America, I don't know when our birthday is, no, but if we are able to generate like 120. And by the way, if you have like $20 or $50, yeah, just splurge. But if you have $1, $3, $5, that's actually how we did the Fred Hutch COVID drive last time, where enough people just donated that reached 200. So our goal was 400. If we get $120 by the time July 4th hits, we will have reached our goal. I've also made a promise that in the same way at the end of the month, one of our members and commanders on the show, Hackall, and commander is going to get tortured on screen in a fun live stream for achieving that goal. That I don't know if N Commander heard me say this live, but if we reach the 400, I'm offering myself for that during DEFCON, when we do our actual DEFCON live stream, whether it's the party or the viewing thing, with my hard limits of being no sounding and no spiders. But I'll let the group members figure out what they want to do with me during DEFCON. So if we reach the 400, I'm going to go through a similar process that N Commander is going to go through this month. So I will put that out there, that if you want to see me go through hell, and there's a lot of people sharpening sticks out there, you can do that. If you are on Twitch, and we're going to get this going, but if you're on Twitch, you can go down, and there we go, and doxing ourselves. There we go. If you are in Twitch, you can go into our profile, scroll down, and there's a app right there that will let you donate. And if I can do this in our chat, nope, that was not it. Geez, I do not know how to computer. That's why. Okay, there we go. So, if don't worry, everything gets changed next time. For those in the chat, if you're on DLive, YouTube, Mixer, or any other thing in chat, I just posted the link to directly donate to our fundraiser. The question I wanted to ask real quick before Quincy goes off is, can you give us the example, if you're legally allowed to, what is the worst, maybe, I don't know if I want to do the best and the worst experience, because usually like the worst experience is more interesting, but like what was like the worst thing you've had to encounter in audio engineering during a live stage show?
Well, I will have to say,
you have to
thankfully,
names, just the scenario.
What? Oh yeah, no. Oddly enough, the worst, you know what? And it has to do with feedback. Perfect, amazing. Look at that. Great question. Thanks, Side Pocket. So this one time, not at Bandcamp, but at Brooklyn Youth School, was we had an event called East by Middle East, and they essentially came through, and they always have it's a collective of Middle Eastern artists, and they usually put on a concert with the last few times that I've worked in, it's a very notable female singer. So the first time I ever worked with them, their singer, this goes actually back to with mic usage. Her voice was, think Susan Vega, like Tom's Diner, like do do do. It very, 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 very light, almost non-existent, but beautiful nonetheless. So that in itself, and the type of mic that she was using, which was, I can't remember specifically the brand, but all I remember was definitely needed phantom power. So an additional 48 volts for those who don't know what that is when I say that. So it required phantom power. And remember, that stage where that space is so live. And the gain structure, essentially what allows for more volume to enter a sound source, no matter what type of mic it is, I could only ride it so hard because I was trying to capture her, but remember, she also had a 5-piece band behind her. And we didn't have a drum shield, so it was picking up everything else. And that was an absolute nightmare. And essentially how we compromised that was by raising the actual output volume of the speakers themselves in order for me to have a little more headroom within my desk. That was problematic in itself, and thankfully it was fixed. But I'd say the biggest issue that I had with that entire event was not even having so much to do with the setup, was the fact that, again, as I mentioned, Middle Eastern culture. And while the singer herself, she wasn't necessarily a part of, she didn't have traditional garb, but all of her production manager, who happened to be her husband, and everyone else was male. And I had a lot of issues essentially doing my job because I'm female. And apart from, even though this gentleman's wife was a singer, she was necessarily a part of, an in-charge position. So having to stand my ground as a female engineer to essentially prove that I could do my job was probably the more difficult thing than the feedback issue itself, which I've encountered in other small instances, but especially in this one, particularly because of where the culture clash was coming from, that was it was rocky at first. But by the end of it, we were fine. I exchanged numbers with their drummer and whatnot. But that in itself, as a female queer person, it was alarming. That was probably the most difficult situation outside of the feedback that I had to attenuate.
So it's a classic case of a little bit of tech and a lot of social issues. Because we say that in tech that the biggest problem is that the human operating system has been updated in forever. So I think, I also want to shout out Kimberly Hart for donating $5 to a cause. We are now at $285. So again, every little bit helps. So thank you for that, because I guess that, because honestly, we've been asking questions, but it seems like everyone's just speechless for the stuff that you've talked about, because that does happen. We've only had that happen once on here. Before we move on to our other speakers, is where can people want to check out your work? You want to shout out anything? Or?
Please follow me on Instagram at queensenora_VDLP. Find me there. I usually post content. I do have an OnlyFans. I also, as Side Pocket mentioned, I work at Lucky 13 Saloon, which is in Gowanus, Brooklyn. It's open for to-go services. I'm there tomorrow from 3 to 9 p.m. So if you're around, please literally drive by, pick up some booze, leave some extra money for us dancers, and be on your merry way. So that, and just stay well, y'all. Thank you for having me, and please lend your ears to the rest of these fabulous panelists.
Awesome. So, I wonder what happened there. Oh, God. Darn it. Don't you love this?
I think you muted yourself.
No, yeah. No, that was.
Well, thank you for having. Thank you for showing up.
Sierra,
awesome.
I think she just exited out immediately, or I did something wrong. But thank you once again. I'm trying to get rid of the presentating part here. Trying to do this. I love technical difficulties. Yes. This is one of the few things I haven't tested the software, otherwise it's been working perfectly fine. Okay. This is Sarah, by the way. One of our group members who's with us. Because I took her off as a presenter, so I don't know why it's like not going away. Thumbs up. I think we gotta do donation. Holy crap! Okay, that also works. Threadsley Punk just donated $115, so we've already actually reached our goal limit way before 4th of July.
I think they donate just to hear you mess up their names.
And I'm so focused on trying to get this thing off that I'm trying not to freak out right now. So despite all the technical difficulties, because we promise it's only a shit show when I'm involved. Thank you.
Side Pocket, I'm just going to say, now you know how it feels.
Oh no, I'm looking forward to this because it's just sort of like, I'm gonna be mad if it's like I'm gonna be like, is that it? You know?
Well, the problem is you have a Neo, and Neo is almost as evil as I am.
Well, he's also known me for longer, so yeah.
Well, the problem is you're going to use the powers of Neo against me.
That might be it. So then, if I were to...
What are we trying to fix?
That's why I forgot. It's two separate windows. I am the dumb.
Yeah. Let's see. This is still in presentating mode.
And then after this, everything should just be smooth sailing.
No, that didn't work. You're right.
That takes both of them off. Okay, doke. Yep, that works. Thank you so much. Because the one thing I didn't test was that. Okay. All right, so let me just check here. Where is the panels?
What Trump's lining up?
Here we go. So, Echo, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, I am going to, actually, what I'm going to do here is, do you have any, like, slides you need to present, or are you just comfortable?
Yeah, I have some slides.
Okay, so as much as it's going to drive me crazy, I'm going to make you the presenter, and what I'm going to do is let you exit naturally as the presenter, so.
Okay.
Yes. So I've done that, so you just need to do a couple of clicks, and you should bring up your slides, and then we will make sure our two awesome people from DC furries, along with DC DEFCON furs, are still alive, so they seem ready. I can never tell, because people always are like, you know, mascot characters, are they really happy under there, or do they have murderous intent, or like what's going on?
Yeah, so can you see my slides?
No, I think I have to do that thing with the window again, so I see what's going on here. So
I see the slides.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, I forgot how to click and drag. That's my fault. But yes, we can see your slides. So whenever you want to begin, Edgar, a beautiful background, by the way. Take it away.
Thanks.
And once again, if anyone has any questions, I will read them in chat on air after the presentation is done.
Oh, there's some. Okay, so I can't. If I make it full screen, it doesn't share the full screen version, so that's why it will just be in the not in the presentation mode. But thanks for having me here. As you said, my name's Echo. I'm going to be talking about transition as biohacking, talking mostly about the more like technical stuff. So today we're going to talk about a little bit about my story, how I got here, the intersection of transness and hacking, some of the aspects or features that trans people can do in a transition, and then go into more details about hormones and surgeries. But first, some quick disclaimers. I'm a white binary trans woman, so my perspective is quite limited. The trans community in general is very, very diverse, and have personal experience with a small section of it and know kind of theoretically about some other stuff, but I'm going to try to be inclusive, but since this is my perspective, that will be a little limited. Yeah, we're going to focus on the biohacking, kind of like the technical, I guess, aspects of transition. So we're not going to really go into social stuff, coming out, any of the societal stuff. That's one, because I don't have much time for this, and two, because that would I want to focus on the biohacking stuff. This presentation will be PG-13, so especially in the surgeries section, I might say like penis or vagina or labia, but I'm not going to be showing like diagrams or pictures. So I know those words can be scandalous. Another disclaimer is that every transition is different. So different trans people will do steps in different orders. Some people will do some things, but not other things. They'll have different reactions to surgeries, to coming out, to hormones, to pretty much anything. It's very, very unique for each person. And
Another thing is that transition isn't required. Trans people are their gender before they transition, like, at all. But yeah. Okay, so a bit about my story is that I hatched, meaning I realized that I was trans in 2013, and then I started hormones and went full-time last year. But prior to 2013, when I was like kind of questioning, I really kind of got into the crypto world, like cryptography, privacy, cypherpunk world, and that kind of ideology, because I was using those tools to get information that I needed, but I also had to hide that information from the people who I was living with, because if they found out that I was looking at that stuff, they'd have a very, very scary reaction. So I was like using Tor to connect to Avon, which is a big asexuality forum, which kind of started at Avon and then went elsewhere. But I think as kind of a tangent, I think that a lot of the kind of cypherpunk worlds, we kind of gravitate to the sexier stories of dissidents who need to coordinate to topple an oppressive regime, or journalists sending sensitive documents, or people leaking stuff as kind of the main, most important use case. But I think that underappreciated use case is for people who are currently in abusive situations, getting access to information and community that they need to survive in a safer way. Yeah, so I also founded the Gender Hacking Village, which will be a full village at the Diana Initiative at Hacker Summer Camp in Vegas. This year we had to cancel. We're still doing online stuff, but we'll definitely be there for 2021. And our community is active now, and it's been active for a while. So if there are any trans hackers who need a trans hacker community or support system, you can let me know, DM me, email me, or whatever. I can hook you up. So given my story, for me, my transness and hacking are like completely inseparable. I can't really take just one or just the other. And I think that's kind of not just for my case, but is similar for other people too, because both being trans and hacking requires really, really, really deep knowledge about a specific area. So with hacking, it'll be whatever you're working on, hardware, software, whatever. For transes, it's your own mind, your own gender, your own feelings and everything. And then both require really, really creative solutions that are really highly individual. So different hackers might have different solutions for the same problem, just like different trans people have different solutions for the same problems that both work for them. And my transition has been my best and hardest and longest hacking project I've ever done and probably ever will do. Okay, let's talk about some of the aspects or features of transition that, again, this is kind of archetypal, I guess, because most or a lot of trans people do it different orders, different ways, but these are kind of the general features. First is that you hatch, which means that you realize that you're trans and you come out to yourself and you say, I am trans, just in your own head. Then you usually you have to deal with that. So you'll like try and accept yourself and explore your gender. That might be by trying with new clothes, new pronouns, maybe a new name, and you might come out to everyone at once or a few people, however it is most comfortable for you. Those are kind of the more social social aspects of transition. So another main one is hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. This is a way to adjust the balance of estrogen and testosterone and their derivatives in your own body. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to get onto HRT. More and more doctors are doing the informed consent model, which pretty much just says, I know what these hormones will do to me and I want it, rather than the kind of old version is you have to like see a therapist and the therapist like refers you and everything. It's also a long process to find the right dosage. So for the first year or two or however long, you'll be like going to get blood work and going to the doctor every month or two and adjusting your dosages until you get the correct ones, because everyone reacts completely differently. Another big feature in a lot of people's transitions is surgery. We'll get into this more in a bit, but it's very expensive. And there's a lot more hoops to jump through for surgery, depending on which one, but usually you need to have a full year on hormones, a full year of presenting as your gender. You need 3 letters of recommendation, 1 from a licensed therapist, 1 from a different licensed therapist who has a PhD, and 1 from the doctor who's prescribing your hormones, saying that you're like healthy for surgery. But then after you get all of that done, you have to choose a surgeon and a procedure and get consults, waiting list, and it's this big thing. It usually takes several months to several years to go from deciding you want to have surgery just to the surgery date. And another aspect of transition is that a lot of this is not officially researched that much. Until really recently, it was kind of a taboo subject for doctors to research. And in some cases, it still is very taboo. And so there's a lot of things that aren't officially supposed to happen. Like your doctor will say, no, this won't happen to you, but then it totally happens to you. So this kind of leads to a very strong community of experts doing kind of like, I guess you'd call it like citizen science, or like compiling all of these anecdotes from people that they're talking to, which probably wouldn't pass peer review, but it can kind of give a much more in-depth information about stuff than the official like studies and journals and stuff. Okay, so let's get into a bit more detail about hormone replacement therapy. This is changing the balance of estrogen and testosterone. You don't really ever want to completely stop one of them, because even with cis people, cis means not trans. So a lot of cis people have both, just in different amounts. So you're not trying to completely like not have any testosterone or any estrogen in your system. You just are trying to shift the balance. And there's a bunch of different methods of administration with like pills or injections, patches, implants, a bunch of stuff. We're not really going to go into the specific methods that much. But hormone replacement therapy results in a lot of changes, physical and non-physical, and macro and micro, so like really big, really noticeable changes, and then also really subtle, hard to notice changes. So for trans feminine people like me, we take some form of estrogen, and then we also need an anti-androgen, which will suppress, but not usually entirely stop, the testosterone. The anti-androgen also often has a lot of side effects, which is really obnoxious. And transmasculine people just take testosterone because it has estrogen blocking properties built into it. Okay, so I have some charts. I don't know if they're that blurry, but these charts show the physical effects based in time. So these are for MTF for trans feminine people like me. So if you start HRT right at the left, you get fat redistribution at about 3 months. This is where your fat deposits in your body will change places and change types too. You'll get reduced muscle mass starting at about 3 or 4 months also. You get way softer skin around the same time. Everyone says you get lower libido, but I would say it's more like different, not really like less. You get reduced erections pretty much immediately, breast growth around 3 months, testicle shrinking, and then body hair thinning. And then they all end at different points too. And this is very general, like it's very, in reality, it'll be different for each person. So for FTMs or transmasculine people, you kind of get the opposite. So fat redistribution in the other ways, with increase in muscle mass, increase in skin oiliness and acne, cessation of menstruation, clitoral enlargement, vaginal atrophy, deepening of the voice, and facial and body hair growth, all at different times. It seems that for transmasculine people, it takes a little bit longer, but yeah, it's really different for everybody. And the non-physical changes happen pretty much immediately, actually, or they start immediately. You get greatly improved mental health. Your mental and emotional processing changes pretty drastically. Your sensory processing is different. Like the sense of smell is different. My sense of taste is different. Touch, temperature, sensitivity, everything about being in my body has changed. And this is true for, I say, most or all trans people, and greatly improved mental well-being. Didn't really expect how much that would affect, which is awesome. So some of the unofficial changes that do happen, that we know kind of anecdotally for trans feminine people, is that we do actually get full-on periods with all of the symptoms accepts the bleeding. We get size changes too, like they say your body doesn't, or your skeletal system doesn't change size, but I've lost a full shoe size and I'm like an inch-ish shorter now. You get greatly increased pain tolerance, and also the hair on your head can regrow. It's like if you have had some hair loss or balding or whatever, they say it doesn't grow back, but in a lot of cases it does. And then for transmasculine people, they report they need completely different dosages for all of their medications, not just the HRT. And then flus and colds and getting sick in general is much, much more painful. So the man flu is totally a thing. And they have reports quite a bit of decreased pain tolerance. So overall, it is a full second puberty with everything that goes with it. Trans feminine people start getting periods, usually. Transmasculine people, when their voice changes, their voice cracks for a while. So it's literally like going through puberty again. But this time we have more resources and less supervision, which I say that because a few months after I started hormones, I was like, didn't really realize how much my impulse control had gotten worse, so that I was like buying all this synth stuff without really thinking.
I think her feed froze. Hang on. Unfortunately, I think Echo's feed froze. I don't know if it's on their end. I think everyone else here's is working. Let me try to reach out to Echo to see if they're on here. That did that. Oh man, right when this was getting to the good part. Let's see. Okay, I'm now going into the chat. I'm gonna type in, because I had a lot of questions too. Echo, are you still there? Your feed froze. I don't know if Echo, if you can hear us, because you're still in our system. So we're just going to double check to see if you're still there and are still able to present. Otherwise, I will. I was going to say this at the end, and I will repeat this, but I congratulate Echo for coming on and talking about this, because there's a lot of stuff that you either have to go through a lot of websites to find, or another situation. And that also, I think that they're a very brave person for coming out there with their identity and their face and to present that as well. So. Unfortunately, I don't think Echo is responding in the... Oh, Echo's back. Yay!
Yay! Welcome back.
Welcome back.
You kind of froze for a second.
Question, real quick. Was that a hardware thing on your end, or was that GoToMeeting? Do you know, or... Are you able to... I think they're typing in now.
We don't have a mic yet for Echo.
Okay. Echo, your mic is muted. Hang on, I might be able to unmute you here. Hopefully I don't cancel them out. Yeah, you're not connected to any audio source right now, so I have no control over that on my end. Welcome to doing everything live. These sort of things happen. Trying to think if maybe there's a way around the thing. I say phone icon. Yeah, you actually might be able to dial audio through phone. So it's also been really funny because they go by both Chaos and Echo, and so it's been kind of a trip because I'll see like talking Echo, and I think it's like GoMeeting or my microphone telling me there's a feedback problem when it's actually the person talking. So I think they were trying to work on this right now. What they might be able to do is, because you do have a choice on this, to go through audio via your computer or audio via your phone. This is a test. Can we hack this together? We'll try Transylvania if I get it. Is that actually you, Echo, on there, or do you want to do a thing where worst comes to worst, either if you can try dialing through phone, if phone doesn't work, as weird as this might sound, and Echo has now cloned themselves.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Spring commercial.
Awesome.
Alright, so
Okay, I think you need to give me presenter
let's
again.
do that again. The big presenter, that should override the current one. And now the new presenter. You were on a roll too. We were like all invested in this. Chat was invested because we're hackers. Tech hates us for no reason.
Yeah. Okay, can you see my screen again?
You're perfectly fine here. Just pick off when you're left off. When you're comfortable enough, take it away.
Okay. So I kind of talked about all the hoops you have to jump through to get to actually get on hormones. So a lot of people will self-medicate by getting the medications through illicit, I guess, means. There's also, I heard some people talking about projects to produce the hormones like on your own. So it's kind of the more traditional biohacking with like making your kitchen into a biolab and stuff, which is pretty cool. And then 2 tangents I wanted to go on. I'm sure all of you are familiar with The Matrix. Well, in the 90s, the main estrogen pill for transfeminine HRT is called Premarin. It was this little red pill. And so in the trans community, at that point, taking the red pill was slang for going on hormones. And the Wachowski sisters who wrote The Matrix are both trans, so they knew that. And the whole thing, in my opinion, makes as much or more sense as like a trans allegory rather than that stuff. The other tangent is
We're gonna roll with it.
I have an echo. That's weird.
It's a tiny bit. It's not a huge problem, so I would say just roll with it.
We need to pay the speaker to account for feedback, as we were talking about previously.
Please, Sierra, please help us.
Yeah. Well, I'm using headphones, so it shouldn't be on my side. Okay, so the second tangent is, I'm sure most of you are also familiar with Alan Turing, who created the Turing machine and is the father of computer science. He was gay and was sentenced to be, they called it chemically castrated at the time. That was accomplished using estrogen pills. So they were pretty much forcing him onto HRT when he's not wanting to. So he was actually like growing breasts and his body is feminizing and stuff. So I also wanted to show some my results. So on the left here is me pre-HRT, and then on the right was literally yesterday. Both of these pictures, I don't have any makeup on or anything, and you can see my skin is a lot clearer and softer, and then also my the shape of my face has changed quite a bit. And in these pictures, there's intentional resting bitch face because it's more easy to compare if it's the same expression. But I also have pictures of when I actually have an expression, and I think this shows more of like how much happier I am now. Which is pretty cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk about surgeries. This is changing your body with surgical measures. It's very expensive and difficult to get. And then once you do pay for it and get it, the recovery is very difficult. Depending on the surgery, like 1 month to a year of recovery for it. And again, not every trans person wants surgery or can get surgery because it's so expensive. So it's kind of broken into 3 kind of categories. One is facial surgery, which is kind of like regular plastic surgery, like nose job or whatever. Then there's top surgery, which deals with the chest, either removing or enhancing the breasts. And then bottom surgery deals with the genitals. There's so many procedures, but these are kind of the main ones. This top line is the transfeminine procedures, and the bottom one is the transmasculine one. Orchiectomy is
There you go again.
This is amazing. Believe it or not, I've actually heard people having problems with this with Zoom as well. So I think it's probably like a local hardware thing. I just want to check to make sure. Yes, they are still in chat. And what you all through again, those are the exposures that I talked about background. I'm pretty sure Echo's going to get back on here in a moment. But what I will ask for her if she wants to continue on with this is that if there are any more difficulties, they might be able to display the slides, and if they want me to relay information, that can be a possibility. Again, there's also the phone method. We're going to kind of eat up time for a couple of minutes, like 3 or 5 minutes, and if not, we're going to currently think our speaker go on a meeting. If they do come back, we would like for them to finish a summary up of what they've been saying. Always the really good parts happen. Like this is a conspiracy. We're hackers, and people don't like us. I'm voting conspiracy on this. Very much so, but I just wanted to comment while we're waiting for it. That goes back. I'm still looking at the project donation.
Welcome back.
Yes, hopefully third time charm here. So
yeah.
We're fighting.
The technical difficulties are following people.
Yeah, I think it's more just like technical, where it's like, you know, as they say, bias is often built into the machines by the programmers. So we're fighting right now. So.
Yeah.
How would you like to proceed to do this? Because I don't think you have that much left. But just to make sure.
Yeah.
My options are. If it happens again, you can type stuff in chat, and I can relay it if that's a possible option. If you reach the end, or just let me know what you want to do. I'm going to mute myself now. You can continue on where you left off.
Okay. Yeah. Can you let me share again? Because I have like one more slide. Two more. There's also, you can get very custom procedures, like zero depth vaginoplasty, which just makes the external labia, not vaginal canal. There's also penile preserving vaginoplasty, which creates the vaginal canal while leaving the penis there. And then you can have optionally urethral lengthening in metoidoplasty and phalloplasty, which will let people pee while standing up. The recovery for that is a lot rougher, so it's optional. So some myths for surgeries is kind of go out of order. People kind of think that the results will look bad or very surgical or gross or whatever, but it's actually common, or it's like the kind of default is to have the default result is that they will be cis passing, meaning they'll look just like a non-trans person, including under a medical exam. There's a lot of stories of trans women who have had vaginoplasty going to an Instacare or whatever for a infection or whatever, and so the doctor examines them but doesn't know that they're trans and doesn't even realize it even after examining them. It's also very sensitive. Again, the default is that you are able to have orgasms, and then it's also fully functional. With vaginoplasty, you can completely self-lubricate, or at least mostly. And for phallo and toroidoplasty, you can actually like have an erection and have penetration. So the results are much better than people think. People think it's kind of a scary thing. So is transition biohacking? Yes. I've completely changed my entire body chemistry, my entire brain chemistry, everything. So yeah, and that's all I have.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I don't know if I Echo unfortunately froze for the last time.
Hey.
Thank you very much. I will. I'm trying to think here about. Yes. I will. I am thinking about because there were actually also questions that I had. So I don't know if they want to do questions entirely related to Chad or if they're going to pop back in again. I am kind of curious. I actually did want to know if there was any sort of like frontier developments for like this type of medication. Like, for example, I know from my mother being type 1 diabetic before she passed away, is that there's been a big thing on having to inject yourself every day of things like insulin pumps, and I was very curious if anyone was actually researching or doing a system like that for the hormone and blocker treatment. So I don't know if they want to take questions or if they want to go in for a moment. I will ask how our DEFCON first doing. Are they okay? You guys are fine. Cool. I just want to wait. I just want to do one more minute, and if she's not back, I want to once again thank her for being brave and coming out, doing an Echo has arrived again, but I do want to, which was going to line up anyway, I do want to tell Echo that thank you so much for being on the stream and doing this topic despite technology hitting us all, and thank you for putting yourself out there on the stream to educate. I do have a quick question. If anyone's asked questions, that's fine. We'll move on to our final speaking thing and then party. But I'm not trying to like stuff. I have a lot of friends who just happen to be transgender, and I also deal a lot with different people in the medical community. And like one of my direct experiences is my mom being a type 1 diabetic. So my question is what is the current front line for medical like new innovative medical techniques for transgender people? Is there things like, for example, like maybe someone is taking like insulin pump design and turn that as a constant feed into for both hormones and blockers rather than constant injection. I just want to know what's the current stuff out there if you know.
Yeah, so on the hormone side of things are pretty set. Like, there isn't really much going on because if you get on injections, you generally inject like once every 2 weeks or once every week at the most. So it's kind of there, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the surgical realm. Don't know much about the transmasculine side of things, but there is a new technique called a peritoneal vaginoplasty, which uses the peritoneum, which is kind of a internal skin, I guess, to make the vaginal canal instead of the scrotal skin, which helps with self-lubrication and healing, and makes the whole recovery process a lot easier. So that's kind of bleeding edge. And there's always talk about full transplants. Like there's been several actually full uterine transplants from a cis woman from one cis woman to a different cis woman who was born without a uterus, and they're able to actually have kids. So maybe in the future, trans women will be able to have their own kids biologically, but that's kind of everyone wants that, but it's still a ways off, I think.
I just want to quickly shout out there, thank you, Balkazi, I hope I pronounced your name right, for following us for our future endeavors. We do have a question from chat. Someone asked, what kind of options are there for non-binary folk? I know friends who do low doses, but there doesn't seem to be a standard like there is for binary folk. Kind of actually reminds me of the question I wanted to ask about the ratios of testosterone and estrogen when you are transition. That was the question asked.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the provider, like what doctor you get. Some of the some who aren't as up to date will say like, no, you have to do all the one way or all the other way. But most doctors will kind of let you choose what levels you want and what your goals are and your targets are for hormones.
I hate technology.
Yeah. Technology has ruined my life.
Yes, it's ruined all of our lives. But
this is why I drink. Cheers, everybody. Absolutely sorry to echo. I'm really sorry this happened to you, girl.
Yes. I will say though, just due to the interest of time, I will later on when she comes back in, I'm gonna ask if she can go and chat and list like ways that you can contact her for future questions. And after DEFCON first present, I'm gonna see if she wants to stick to the end and attempt to try to ask further questions, whether it's in chat or so. It's not because we like hate her or anything. It's just the interest of time for our speakers. So once again, thank you, Echo, for presenting.
Everybody, come up.
Yes. So, introducing our third group here. So most of your chat might be wondering why we have two animal dog mascots in the chat. That on one hand I feel sorry for, because I know it's like being inside of a suit for long periods of time. So I'm sorry to make you guys wait so long. On the other hand, including DEFCON itself, I have seen furs that might be on drugs that they just dance party hard EDM music for like 18,000 years. I just keep you updated, Echo. I just want to say thank you again. I know you didn't fully get to answer your question, but thank you for presenting.
Thanks for having me.
After DC goes, if you have any questions, we might be able to text message the chat. But real quick, is there any way that people, if they want to have more questions, is there any one way that people want to reach out to you, or do you want to shout out something like your CTF group?
Yeah, the best way to reach out is probably Twitter, to just DM me on Twitter. Twitter handle is ecosystem name, and I think it was on the tweets that you guys sent out. And yeah, if anyone's is a trans hacker and needs trans hacker friends or support system, or have any questions or anything, let me know. No,
awesome.
Do what I can.
Thank you so much for doing that presentation. That was very enlightening. I mean, a lot of
Good.
For that, as well as what I was going to say. Also, if anyone out there, if you feel alone, if you have any questions, also don't be afraid to reach out to us at DEFCON201, whether you email our DM our Twitter or message us info@defcon201.org, because we'd rather see you here, because there's a small pool of people that we'd rather not see here, but they're currently in power right now and terrible. So speaking of things that are not terrible, so furries. They've been part of the internet forever. They've been part of humanity technically since the beginning. Jack's right now seeing all of his something awful flash going over his eyes right now. And
I quit something awful back in 2006, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, I was around for all the storied history. I
just mentioned that as like visiting websites, like riot.com and stuff. If you've been around the internet for a bit, you probably have encountered furries. And to be honest, at this point, if we had like I don't know, like a furry vice president and insane clown posse president would probably honestly be doing better than our current administration right now if people would actually have money and jobs. So without further ado, we really want to thank DEFCON for bringing two awesome people that I tried not to spoil what they do because they told me some of the stuff, and it's really incredible. That is about technology. Get your head out of the gutter because my head's in the sewer. And without further ado, I would like DEFCON first to introduce themselves. Is there someone from DEFCON first that is currently on here that I have to screen share?
Yeah, Metabulp, I'm in a screen share.
Okay. Give me a moment. I'm going to open up the chat if I can remember correctly how to do that again. Because this is the part that I'm not used to.
Oh, click the X.
Change Windows. I think maybe I have to scroll. There we go. I'm a genius. All right. So okay, we're going in here. Who's the person I have to enable?
Metabulp. Me.
Here we go. So make presenter. Yes. This is honestly outside the screen sharing thing. Honestly, less confusing than Zoom. It's just been like we just spun up this machine. So.
Just a second.
Perfectly fine. I don't think you can have worse technical disasters than what I've been having.
Oh no, you definitely.
Are you monitoring yourself, by the way? Because I can hear you through you.
Yes. That's the way we're currently doing right now. After this is all done, we're going to attempt to try to select GoToMeeting as an actual window. Although that's an overall problem of OBS. Some Windows systems recognize it, some Windows doesn't. I mean the individual apps, not the platform windows.
Stand by 2 seconds. I'm going to rejoin the call. It needs me to rejoin to be able to share my screen. So I had to enable a setting. 1 second.
Well, you can do that and kind of go around. Wrong thing to grab. There we go. So as we wait for Meta to come back in, I guess I should ask, how's everyone's headspace going on right now? I mean, we can't see for Sync and Emblade inside of it.
I should be back. Am I back?
Awesome.
You're going to need to make me presenter again?
Yes. The current one that's talking. So
Yes, me.
Good.
There we go. Awesome. Let's do application. Share. Okay, do you see the DEFCON for screen?
Yes, it is there haunting our memories.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. My name is Metabulp. I'm one of the founders of DEFCON Furs and basically co-chair of the events. We also have Emblade here with us and Sync that'll be showing off some of the cool things they've done with their hobbies and their interests. I'm just giving a very short, brief introduction to DEFCON Furs. We're at DC Furs on Twitter. If you want to interact with us. But basically, what the heck are we? Well, if you're a furry and you like to hack stuff, then we're basically the group for you. We primarily do stuff at DEFCON, but we do also host meetups around different places in the U.S. at conventions, and there's people in other countries that are also part of the community. I'll go into that on a further slide. I only got 4 here, so don't worry. What is a furry? So basically, anyone who's interested in cartoon animals. That is literally the full summation of what is furry and how you're interested. If you like cartoons, if you like books, novels, anime, whatever. If it has an animal character on it that walks on 2 legs, has human features, that's the definition of furry, and everyone has their own interpretation of that. So why furries at DEFCON? I actually get this question kind of a lot in person. Well, basically because we're already there and we've been there for a very long time. It might not have just been so obvious. So as you can see, there's a couple pictures here from either people in the community or from DEFCON itself. Furries, by their own nature, are very diverse. It crosses all the spectrums of diversity, whether that be your geolocation, your race, your gender, your profession, whether you're technical or non-technical, it's just another subsect of the human population. So as diverse as humans are is as diverse as furries are. As far as DEFCON, there are a lot of furries that are already giving talks that you might not know as a furry. If you go to DEFCON and you look at the crowd, you won't be able to tell which people there are furries or not, because there's no real defining characteristics that's overtly, unless they're obviously there in a fursuit. Like, as you can see, we have someone here standing on the Tesla at the car hacking village wearing a fursuit, which is, technically a mascot, but a mascot, might be a couple $100. Fursuits are unique to one person, designed by the person that's wearing them. That cost usually $2,000 to $4,000, and they're handmade by other furries. It's a little bit different. We have someone lockpicking in a fursuit. I think it's hard. It's a little bit harder there. And of course, the ongoing joke of furries run the internet. It's actually kind of true. A lot of the very first websites and mucks and stuff were done by people who were technically able to do those things and were furry. And maybe their hobby of being a furry and wanting to connect with the people on the internet is what brought some of the cool stuff there is today. And of course, we have our little hall pass from Noid. We told the goons we were dared to do a fursuit parade at DEFCON. That was the origin story of that. And so, yeah, we're there. We like to have fun. We are part of a nonprofit org called Hack Your Lives, which the whole point is to enable people to hack their life to be what it is they want to be. And furry is one of the ways you can hack your life. And so what we do while we're at DEFCON, we have our own parties. We usually do several charities every year. So we've raised over $9,000 in the last 3 years for local Las Vegas charities, such as the Center Las Vegas Pride, and even donated to QueerCon and Diana Initiative. So we're very much about the local community there for those events, and just bringing charity and other money to other charities that match our mission of enabling people to kind of be themselves in all the different ways that make them them. So I'll stop rambling about DEFCON first and let's get to some of the cool people who have some stuff to show you today. So I'll go ahead and stop presenting here, and then we can have Emblade come on. Where's the stop button? This one.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview right there. I do want to mention before we get to Emblade that a little bit of background that I don't even know if my roommates. Don't worry, I'm not coming out as a furry, but I think this is kind of a funny background here. Not that there's anything wrong with that per se. Just because I think this is kind of
coming out of the kennel.
Trip here. That's actually a brilliant word.
Thank you for that.
Yes. So
previous roommate before Side Pocket was actually a furry, though. So
okay, we got Swift on security. Come join us.
So here's the
okay. I'm sorry. I meant to be check you guys out at DC 26, but I'm still doing the write up of how that mission fucked up. But continue.
Mention a bit about my story. So I don't know how our presenters are going to say this name real quick, but years ago, I was introduced to a media personality that has a way different public opinion view about him than he does now, known as the Ranting Griffin. And he used to host a online show years ago. There's the two reactions called 2 Cents, and I actually used to help make a lot of comedy on that show. And because of that show, I found Rant Radio, which was a Canadian, one of the first early online radio stations that was actually done through Canada. And that's how I found out that Off of the Hook not only did not disappear, but it's actually now on online radio, and I started to dedicate Off the Hook. So funny enough, thanks to a group of furry communities that got me reinvigorated into hacking in my preteens. And then I'm here with this nightmare scenario now. So I just thought I would share that as a hilarious, amazing, funny thing. And Jack's now thinking, who the heck did I Canada, yes! The Canadians! Shout out to Underman and the Canucks and all the beautiful...
Yeah.
Can you...
It's an awesome country. It's so awesome they have a pot leaf on their flag.
Yes.
It's great. Joking.
I guess to continue on here, I don't want to hold up the speakers. I'm going to try to do it so that we're going to mute myself, and hopefully when each one of them speaks, it should be able to go back between the two, and I'm going to go through a pee break and come back. If anyone has any questions in chat, let them know. I'll relay that. Otherwise, Emblade and Sync, we are so fortunate enough to have you talk about some of the crazy stuff that you do. I would say like how fursuits in general constructed, and then just talk about your crazy stuff. Take it away, you guys.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, Side Pocket. You guys are all awesome. Yeah. So you keep running up. I'm hot, whatever. I'm actually quite fine. I've got like a fan in my head, and I had a giant fan blowing on me for like the last hour, so I'm good. But yeah, hi. I'm Emblade. I've been suiting for quite some time. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me know if you can't, because I'm trying to.
We can hear you.
All right, cool.
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Leave it Charlie.
Try to be too nervous talking, but it's just this is what I do. I'm a furry. I 100% like. Obviously, I've gone all the way down the rabbit hole, and I've got the suit. I've done everything. I've gone to the cons. I fortunately was able to go to DEFCON in 2018, DC 26, and my buddy Alexi dragged me out to go there. So I get to meet up with the DC First crew, and wow, what a great, awesome group! Like those guys are awesome. They had their own suite. We had our own DJs and parties and everything. It was like it was great. Like I could even change in their suite and go to the con space because it's a casino. You can't have covering your face in the casino, so that was kind of a challenge because I was in a Flamingo at the time and they're in the Caesar. So again, like holy crap, it was hot there. I never experienced heat, but anyway, besides the fact, I don't think of anything. So yeah, like when I got out there, that was just really fun, to be able to be in suit at a different place that's not a furry convention, because I used to go to these places where it's just fur cons and everybody's a freaking furry, and it's like cool, right? But I go out there and see people like, out, of course, out of suit, just walk around with their backpacks or laptop bags, and they all look like, geeks, because it's DEF CON, and I'm like, oh my God, furries! Everybody's a furry. I just want to hug them all, but it's like, you can't because they're not really furries. That's the thing. Like we don't really handshake. That's just hugs. It's like the international furry thing now. Of course, now with the COVID, you can't do anything. So it's kind of awkward when you go to a fur meet. It's like there's no hugging or nothing. It's kind of weird. And that's also cool too, because I'm kind of anyway. So yes, as per hacking technical stuff, yes, I have LEDs in my suit. In 2013, I got my fursuit, and it was great. My character was great in art. I was a furry for about a couple years, and it looked great in art. I'm a white Akita. And like Akita Inu, like from Japan. So I chose the species because I like the dog. I thought they're really cute, and they were very unique. I don't want to be a wolf or a fox or like something common. I want to be different. Unfortunately, now nobody really identifies what I am. Like I go in the street, they're like, "Oh, a husky or a wolf." I'm like, "Okay, close enough," But yeah, so I got my suit, and I'm like, that's a lot of white. There's no marking. It's just white. It's all white. Blue eyes, black pads. That's my ref sheet. And I'm like, well, shit. Anyway, I had bought like a bunch of these LEDs from Costco, like the 12-volt ones. You peel and stick on a cabinet. It has an IR controller. It's like you plug in the wall. And I was like, oh, what do they look like inside the bodysuit? So I stuck them in, and the whole bodysuit just went like exploded with light. And I'm like, yes, that's what I'm gonna do with this thing. That's how I'm gonna add color to my suit. So, funnily enough, I still don't portray my art of me being glowy. I've done a few pieces to kind of like make it canon, but it's just a fursuit thing for me, right? It's just something cool to do, and and what I like doing, and I don't do it to be like popular, even though I do get noticed, and I go to a con and I stand out from the rest of the suitors, and it's crazy. But the funny thing is, I actually do it because it makes me feel comfortable, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, everybody has social anxiety, you know, and they have like they feel like they don't fit in or something like that, or they feel awkward. And like, I find like even since I was like 5 years old, I can remember that I love like tinkering with wires. I used to carry wires and circuitry in a little fanny pack and take it with me everywhere we go. Like my parents would go to a restaurant, I was dump it out and start making something, and that made me happy. Like I love wiring. I don't know why I'm not an electrician. Like I'm actually a pipe fitter by trade, but but whatever happens, happens. I might get an electrician later on. I might go instrumentation, but that's another subject. But yeah, I love wiring, and just covering wires and LEDs is pretty cool. So for the first year, I used those stupid 12-volt LEDs. I just literally peeled and stuck them onto a separate bodysuit in my suit, and I ran for a whole year doing that. I actually went to like a few different cons, and oh my gosh, the maintenance! Like every time I move an arm, it'll break an LED. I was like, break. So much maintenance. And then after a whole year of doing this, I decided it's time to upgrade. And a friend of mine had introduced me to the world of Arduino, the world of NeoPixels, or WS2812B LEDs, if some of you guys may know. And so I'm like, yes, now I can program it and control whatever I want. Cool. So I completely redesigned the whole bodysuit. After a whole year of being a light suiter, I had a big checklist of notes of what I wanted exactly. And I basically hit off almost everything. I still have a lot of future stuff to do, which I'll explain in a bit. But how I work basically is my suit has 350 LEDs in it. So there's LEDs here, on the belly, the back, tail, like everywhere. I wish there was more. But you know, I can only do so much without, you know, pulling my fur out, fixing or trying to power everything, right? Because power takes battery, and more battery to more weights, and you got to hide them somewhere, right? So so basically 350 LEDs. I'm running a Teensy 3.2 microcontroller. It's right about here on my side. Like literally, it's right here. You can't even see it, but it's like right there. My batteries are right here. You can't even see it. I'm just so fat that you can't really see it sticking out, really. So I had my friend Alexi, who took me to DEFCON. He's a software engineer, like the Microsoft software engineer. And I basically said, make work. And so he did. Literally while we're driving to Vancouver, he programmed it, two of us in the back of my truck, programming this light suit I just created. And we finally got something presentable at the con. It was just quite funny. So but then eventually after about a couple months, you know, I kept bugging him for updates, whatever. And I was like, you know what, I need to sit down and learn this. So I finally sat down, started with a blank Arduino page, and just, again, notes, and just start doing exactly what I want. Because he is more of a high-level programmer. He doesn't quite understand so much the low-level stuff, which I did a lot of research on already. So understanding, like, you know, data types and what to use in the Teensy and all that kind of stuff, right? So I understand he's a very brilliant person for programming. Oh my gosh, that guy! I can tell you stories, but I don't think it's very PG here. So, it's we basically I reprogrammed everything, did it on my own. So now that was like 2015. So it's been 5 years. I've been programming, learning more and more and more, and now today I've actually opened up commissions because I realized there's a big gap, there's a big void of people who know electronics and can do them well, do them reliably, and be able to take a commission for, say, a suit maker who makes suits but has no idea how to do electronics. They'll come to me and say, "Yeah, I need LEDs in the eyes, and I want like stuff in the cheeks, and I have antennas, and you know, I want my tail to light up, and you know, and I want a heart rate sensor to react to stuff in the face." And I'm like, "Sure, I'll do it. I'll put you down what exactly my time and materials gonna take, and let's go." And my pricing is quite reasonable, so I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and it's been pretty successful actually. A lot of people praise my work. They say it's quite bulletproof, and I stand behind my work too. If anything goes wrong, you know, obviously it's wiring, that's circuitry, something's got to go wrong. I say just send it to me and I'll fix it. You get it back free of charge, like no problem. Like
You got a question in the chat.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
Fritzis said, how hot is it in these fursuits?
Oh, okay, I'll tell you right now. I got an IR temperature sensor. Let's see what is off my neck.
See, this is so wholesome because DEFCON 201 who are not furries would probably use a rectal temperature system, so thank you.
Jeez.
We were told to keep this safe for work.
Other things. And some of it would probably be tied up as well. And
Not that hot, actually. I'm pretty cold. Yeah, I have a fan in my head, blowing air in my face and pushing air in. Some people have an argument. It's always these stupid arguments. Like, you want to have air fan pushing air out or pulling it in? Mine's pulling in because I like to be able to breathe. You know, I don't know what it is. And sometimes I have a cool pack. I wear a vest that has PCM gels inside. That helps me be able to go shooting for much longer. You know, if I'm at a dance or whatever, I can go for like 3 hours and be fine. You know, be working out.
How do you control the patterns on your suit if the controller's inside of your belly?
Oh, yes. Okay, so my suit only has 4 inputs. Only 4. One of them is a microphone for audio reaction, which is right here. So when I talk, I light up. See? Crack, crack. It's auto gain, so it will adjust to the, obviously it's very sensitive because it's a quiet room, but when it gets to a loud rave, it will adjust for the loudness. The other 2 sensors are, I'll break the magic, buttons. There you go, buttons. So, there's a connector here hanging out. There you go, buttons. So like, how I do it, here's, as I said, a lot of notes, programming, right? So here it is, mirror image. So here, I'm pushing a button. See how there's a light coming up? There you go. There you go. Framing. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting this button, and it's advancing. So all these dots are in special mode. So if I go to like the red number 3, that's like rainbows. When I let it go, it changes to rainbows. If I go to red 5, I think that's the right one. Not wrong one. One more. There we go. So everything goes off, but when I hit a button, it makes you light up. Hit another button, it also makes you light up. Like that. If I long press, it turns off my eyes. And if I push both buttons, my eyes come on. If I push one, it changes the color. And another one changes the brightness. See? So now I'm blue. If I go back to framing, this one I think it is. So now I'm blue. When I flash hit this button, now I'm blue because it matches the eyes. So it's programming, you know? And all my modes are different. Like all the green ones are music reactive. All the blue ones are like acting LEDs. So like this one here is the act where I'll stand back a bit. There, so like if I upload the video, I can do this, do that, you do this. Okay.
Now you're just showing off.
See, but that's it's just button presses. See? That's all it is. Acting. That's what I love about it. It's something I never actually thought I would like about the LEDs was be able to act with the LEDs and like do stomps and just push a button at the same time as I stomp. And it looks like I've done a thing, you know, like it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun to do. It's fun to freak people out and, you know, yeah.
What would you say to maybe some people in the audience who've never really dabbled in LEDs and like are looking at this and it's like, this is a hobby that I might want to get into. Like, what would you leave them with?
Oh, yeah. So what I would say is the way how I learned, because all I had was high school C++ programming knowledge, like from year 2000. Like that's when I graduated high school, 2000, and I had one class of C++, and that was it. So how I picked this up was I got one of those Arduino starter kits, right? It's like a little box, and it comes with a Arduino Uno, has a little booklet of, literally I did this. I took the box and I went to page 1. It says, here's your breadboard. Here's a 2-pin LED. Here's a resistor. Here's a jumper wire. Put it in pin, what was it, A1 or whatever, A0 to analog output. And here's the sketch to make this LED turn on. Upload it. And I did exactly what they said. And I was like, you know, like when you just make that first thing work, it's like you just get excited, just want to learn more. So I went to the next page, like here's how you do a rotary encoder. Next page, here's how you output to an LCD screen. Next page, here's how you talk to an adjustable LED, right? Here's how you get the library. So and that's what I'm saying. And you just get one of those Arduino starter kits. Just search for it anywhere. You can get it from Adafruit. They have them there, starter kits. They also have the LEDs there called NeoPixels. And you can just start playing with it, start tinkering. Don't make it too much of a chore. Just get it and start doing it, and you'll end up like this.
Sounds great. It sounds like and yeah, I've worked with those too. The from Adafruit, they have some really cool introduction into this kind of stuff, and they make it very accessible for all ages, even.
The community that Lady Ada and their crew, even like everybody, the whole crew of Adafruit, they did a phenomenal job at making the embedded electronics community thrive. Because if it wasn't for that, I would never have discovered any of this, and this is so cool because I thought programming was boring because it's just on a computer, but now it's like in real life. It's like, yeah, it was really cool, you know.
Programming is everything a computer is attached to, which is everything these days. The question I had was, how does the mouth move?
Oh, you know what? It's funny because I get asked two questions all the time. One is, are you hot? And how does your mouth move?
Because it actually moves right in sync with your voice, and it's like almost perfect. I was like looking at the entire time, like, wow, that's pretty good.
Years of programming. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I have different answers, but I'll give you the right one. It's just literally my chin right back here is butting against the bottom of the jaw of them.
Okay, so
it's spring-loaded shut. So if I pull my head back, you can close it. It springs got a little loose, so I have to kind of.
Okay, that's not like mechanical or anything. All right, just asking.
No, but I do know a friend of mine who 3D printed a fursuit head, and he did like a gear reduction, crazy complicated gear reduction system, where a little bit of movement for your chin does a huge amount of movement on his jaw. It just amplified it, and it was really cool how he did it. So
that is pretty cool, actually.
I also know someone who won a major cosplay competition at San Diego Comic-Con because they were going as a group of the characters in the video game Mass Effect. And he won because and he also factored the input delay for the radio signaling. He actually made a rig for his head that would just do like the overall like facial when certain muscles move, and then had that because he works in animatronics maps onto the animatronics alien head, and the whole point of his character was he didn't say anything, and then when it came time for the syncing, he just lip synced that suit, but when the whole thing started to move like it was like an animatronic movie that blew away.
Oh yeah.
If you hear explosions, that is because we're in New Jersey, and
It's yes, Jersey City.
has it been of how they do that? It's like an optical illusion where the eyes track where it always looks like you're looking directly at the person.
Yeah, this is called 3D follow me eyes.
Yeah, because I know it's like recessed in, but is there like a certain angular measurement you have to do to create that illusion?
There's a general rule of thumb. Basically, you just gotta recess them in and do the right shape. I keep looking at the wrong camera. I put it over here. I actually don't like how far back my eyes are. I think they're too far back because if I don't have any lighting in my eyes, like if I turn this all off, this is gonna go. Well, I do have some lighting here, but they get really dark, right? It gets super dark. Why is my camera so low? Come on, there we go. That's better. So they get pretty dark, especially in sunlight outdoors. It just goes black, and I hate that, you know. So
in the interest of time, let's hear a little bit about what Sync has.
Yeah, Sync. Take it on, Sync.
Hey, Sync.
Hi.
I actually know you're the one who has the CTF in their tail. Or do you want to explain that?
Yes, indeed. So, hi, I'm Sync. I'm from Australia. I'm stuck here because of COVID. Actually, no, I work here now. But yeah, and I've sort of come from a somewhat different path to Emblade. I've been a furry since 2015, and I actually started out as a cyberpunk. For those of you who know your robots, imagine a Sony Aibo ERS 110 entertainment robot that grew up and became an adult. And so, of course, it's about, so furries, you can't see our actual faces. We are expressive in our movements, and these robots, these express their emotions, express things through their, through lights as well as their motions. So, I can be angry or, not particularly interested. Or, what's this? So, and part of that is not just expressing what I'm feeling, but it's in interaction with others. So, for example, the tail that was referred to has a bunch of lights in it. This is actually the first bit of my fursuit that I put together. It actually has an open wireless access point in it. So if you're at a convention and you find an access point called SyncX Tail, that's me. Anyone can connect to it. It's got a captive DNS server, and basically it will redirect you to a page that lets you play with the colors. So it's kind of, there's also there's actually a couple of sort of flags there in the hacking challenge sense as well, and there is an open challenge to see if you can hack into my tail, such as it is. I think I must be one of very few convention goers who says everyone can do penetration testing on my tail. But anyway, the idea is that people are going to start playing games, right? Who can control my tail, because of course it reacts to the last to the last command. So it's sort of great. You go to the convention and then someone runs up to you and says, "Hey, I didn't think you were here, but I saw your tail on the Wi-Fi network." So it's just a different level of interaction. Those of you who participate in Badge Life, who play with all those convention badges, that, imagine that, but as your suit. And it's about other types of interactions. So, for example, I'm working on various things using Bluetooth Low Energy to detect the devices of the people around me and react accordingly. The body harness that my, assuming I can, here we go. There's a body harness that I wear at the raves and the dances, and if it's in the correct mode, once it's in the correct mode, there we go. It's motion sensitive. So when I dance around, when people run into me, when people interact with me, it changes. So for me, this whole sort of blingy LED thing is about new ways of interacting with the people around me. Being able to form these expressions, being able to do things and just be a little bit different, right? So M-Blade has the touch things. I don't have that. What I do have is I actually have a couple of switches in the headpiece that I hit with my mouth and my tongue. So that blink, or that change, that's all stuff that, like, me hitting switches with the corner of my mouth or with my tongue. So I can do these changes without touching anything. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages. It makes it a bit hard to talk while you're actually trying to manipulate stuff with your tongue. But yeah, that's what I get into. There's of course other things. This is actually version 3 of this outfit. Version 1 actually had a sensor in the nose, so when you boop it, when someone hits you on the nose, which is kind of a common greeting in furrydom, in some parts of furrydom, it actually does something with the lights. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the short version. I know we're running short on time. I figured we should probably, I'm happy to go to Q&A if we want to do some more discussions, but that's basically my summary.
I think everyone has 8 million questions. Both of you are fantastic, as well as the work that DC First has done. My question to both of you is actually, have either of you or your colleagues have experimented with doing biometric sensors in order to change lights, such as putting things that may be checked, like the moisture of your skin or whatever, and that would change?
Yeah, I have.
Yep, I've done a bit of. Well, Emily, you start, and then I'll finish up.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I've done a heart rate sensor project once with somebody. With Adafruit has a nice little turnkey kit. It's by Polaris, I think, or Polar. It's like a strap mount. Polar, yeah. And it's a wireless thing, right? And the battery's all built into it. And they say it lasts for years, but Anyway, it has like a little receiver, and you just literally it turns a pin high or low if there's a beat of a heart, and you just attach that to an I/O on your controller, and you can just monitor it. And when it goes high, you get a beat. So pretty simple stuff. Any other stuff like temperature? I haven't done it, but I know a friend of mine built a suit. He's in Seattle. He did a display, and he had like 5 sensors, temperature sensors throughout his body, like his head, back, arms, wherever, and like, and it would just show like a little picture of a body, like, and it shows like what temperatures they are. It's kind of cute what he's done. So he blogs everything. It's crazy. Yeah. What have you done? Things?
Yeah, so actually, I did a lot of looking at cheap, hacker ways of getting biological data for other reasons as well. So for me, I'm about being expressive, and for me, heart rate was a little bit too random and not really under enough expressive control. Skin galvanic response, for me at least, I don't sweat very much. So skin galvanic response was just too slow. I actually found the 2 things that were most interesting in terms of avenues for being expressive was the first one was breathing, because that's actually a very much under control, both under deliberate control, but also very reactive subconsciously. Yeah. So being able to sense breathing just using a simple chest strap with a resistive element in it and encoding that in lights was actually very interesting. The second one, interestingly enough, was actually cranial muscle excitation. Those of you who've seen those games where you kind of control the thing with your mind kind of thing, and you put a headband on, or you have the ears that move with your brain waves. You've got a clip on your ear and a headband. Those aren't measuring your brain waves. You can't measure that kind of stuff. Or what those things are doing, those things, and what's going on here?
Audio is degrading a little bit.
Okay. I've got a loose connection here. What those things are doing is they're picking up the excitations of the subconscious muscles in your forehead that tense up when you concentrate, right? The NeuroSky mindwave chip does that. That I found is actually, again, one of those signals that can be both under very subconscious control. I'm playing fast and loose for the psychologists among you. But it also is something that you can control and you can kind of mix in. So as an avenue for being expressive, I find those to be quite nice. Heart rate is also okay, but I find those 2 to be the most useful. And I mean, again, this is version 3, and so a bunch of stuff got ripped out to put stuff in, and that's coming.
Let's see what I want to do. I want to put accelerometers on my wrists, 2 of them, one on each. Yep. So I'll be able to zero them and be like, be like. Brown, control things.
Oh, gesture recognition, and then gesture recognition is a pretty hot topic, and actually there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. It's
As an insomniac that's on an unknown identity for insomnia, I've gone through a couple of sleep tests, and I can say that the sensors that they have there are ridiculously accurate to the point where they can actually tell where you are looking in any direction, depending on the structure. Yeah. So that's pretty good. I do want to say here, not only am I going to open questions to anyone who's currently in chat right now, but we also have a question in our chat. And if you are in our chat, whether it's on Twitch or DLive, YouTube, Mixer, hi Microsoft people, message us and we'll relay it. So it says, how are you detecting breathing, audio, like chest movement? It's kind of a big question. Someone did ask that.
So for me, my breathing sensor was basically a strap around the chest going to a force sensing resistor. And all I did was measure the resistance and get my signal out of that. And then I would perform some very, very simple frequency domain analysis on that to get the rate of breathing, as well as just to use the absolute value to modulate things.
One of our chat people asked, and this is for you, please tell me that you charge up via USB cable in your tail.
Oh, it's better than that. The USB pack in my tail has 2 outputs, so I can actually charge something else off my. I can plug my phone into my tail.
2 things. No, so just so you know, I didn't say it. The side pocket didn't say it either. that was somebody else. just so you know, the usual suspects did not engage in that one.
What? My tail can charge a cell phone. What's wrong with that? Huh?
Absolutely nothing, as far as I'm concerned. But we were just trying to keep PG-13. I'm going to bully some Orderville out of this. The crazier, the better.
It's not even trying to be PG-13. It's that we're usually known for like our crazy topics that we bring on and stuff. So we have to mention that when it's not us two doing a circus act, not in that way. Maybe paying up. But that you know we have a bunch of awesome crazy hackers on. So anyone in the chat, does anyone have any questions? Because I have a couple questions, but I want to hear if anyone else in chat has anything. Or are you guys all speechless?
Oh, we have plenty. I can talk for hours. Don't you worry about that.
Oh yeah, same here.
Okay.
Also, I have my social media if you guys ever want to find it. I'm
out of chin, but
yeah. Focus.
We see it.
You might be better off putting that in the chat.
Yeah, I just might do that.
I've done
That's the chat will let me. You know how they are. I just figure it's bad. But
somebody asked if there's any fans.
So I've got 4 fans. Being a cyberpop means I should have cooling vents. I've actually got 4 fans in here. So I'm from Australia, right? So I'm used to suiting, having this stuff on when it's. I think what's good. I'm sorry. I can't remember how to convert into degrees freedom. But at any rate, no, 4 fans. It actually gets cold in here, especially once you get a bit of evaporation. Whereas folks like Emblade, being Canadian, I guess you need all the cooling you can get, right?
You know, it's funny, we get to like -40 Celsius here, and I've gone out shooting in that weather, and I still get hot. So you just get used to it.
So for the thermal engineers out there, in case you're wondering, around about the average point where you get good, where you can basically fursuit indefinitely without assistive cooling, is generally around 4 degrees Celsius. That's at which you can actually get the heat out normally. Of course, you do get outliers.
Like a wind actually passes right through me. It's really nice. I've been to Burning Man twice, and people just lose their minds thinking I'm gonna like die in this thing. But I'm actually quite okay because it's so dry and the wind's always blowing. So
that helps.
There's actually a great story from Anthony Daniels who plays Secret from R2D2, where because his Android outfit's completely entirely made of reflective metal, that unlike everyone else during the Tatooine scenes, he's actually freezing in there, and the first time he tested it, he got near hypothermia because he had no heat whatsoever, no heat protection in that suit. So.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, my character is completely black, so I catch all the solar radiation.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever tried something like liquid cooling? What's it called? In my time in the Army, I was among other things like the Land Combat Expo. They had like a literally cooling vest. It's literally like a vest designed to wear under armor, and it was just like liquid plumbing in it. So the whole idea is you take cold water, and it would just circulate, in these tubes around your chest and keep your chest cool. And that would just keep the rest of your body cool.
So I actually did that before. I built that.
Yeah. I tried it on. It was like magic because the thing is, though, it's it presses right against, because it's tight enough that it presses against your blood vessels, and then it just lets your blood circulates. And literally every bone in your body gets cold.
It's funny that you mention that because if you Google this, there's actually an article, several of them, where a cooling vest invented by a furry made its way into the U.S. military. So it might even be that same one.
Wow! Yeah, it could be it. That definitely could be it. This is 2005, a long time ago.
Yeah. So there's a army vet, I believe. Let's see. Hold on. I'm reading the article. He's a veteran who made a cooling suit and he made it back.
Oh wow! So yeah, it's kind of not.
I
quite
actually
that
put
elaborate,
this
but
together. This is completely homemade.
oh, nice.
Never
Nice.
really been tested though. So this is supposed to be a hoodie, but I made the hoodie too big. Right here. Here's a hood.
Oh, so that's awesome. So you get the like the full.
Right up over your head and down. My friend who's a machinist, machined the headers for me. Where'd they go? Oh, that went. There's a pump. Yeah, here's one header anyway. You saw that. So it's all custom made. So,
Very cool.
Nice.
I do want to
Nice.
put out there, someone did ask what happens. Do you have any safety measures or anything for if your fursuit gets wet? Is there any like downsides to that? Like what happens when water is introduced?
Okay. My suit is pretty much waterproof except right up to about here. So I can actually go walking through water. I'll use right down to my feet. The batteries obviously are not waterproof. The controller is not. It's water resistant. I can sweat all over it all day I want. It's fine, but it can't be submerged, right? So all my LEDs are actually waterproof. I can actually put these right in the washing machine and it'll be mostly fine. So, yeah. So everything's
What about you,
waterproof.
Sink?
So for me, water is not such a great idea. Having said that, of course, things are modular and all that, so things will dry out. Everything's running at 5 volts, except for the, in fact, actually everything is running at 5 volts. So, there's only so much damage that can happen. These things dry out.
I have two of these.
But it's not ideal.
This is what I have for batteries, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So power systems are actually an interesting thing. So I actually run everything off those USB batteries, which people either love or hate.
Well, this is not a LiPo, by the way.
No, that's those. So well, yeah. So I use them because they're easy to get and easy to charge. You can find them everywhere. But Emblade, why have you gone for the life? I assume they're life batteries.
Yes, they're life batteries. Because they're skinny. Look how thin this thing is. Look how skinny. Right? It's even skinnier than most USB power banks. And I can get more current out of these. I can pull, in theory, 60 amps out of this battery. Because it's a 20C 3000 milliamp hour or 3 amp. But I wouldn't. After 10 amps, it gets a little hot, so I wouldn't do that. I don't believe them at all. But it's a life battery because life batteries are inert. They will not catch fire. So I can actually cut this open right here, right now, and it's not going to catch fire. I can put a spike right through it, not going to catch fire. I can short it out when it's fully charged. It'll smoke and get angry, but it's not going to catch fire. So
it'll set other things on fire.
And even top of all that, I still wear them inside of a fireproof bag inside my suit. I got these these fireproof bags right here. This one's kind of old and worn right the heck out, so I don't use it anymore. But yeah, you're like little RC charging bags. When you race RC cars, you're required to have one of these when you race at a sanctioned race. So yeah.
So I guess my question is because I know enough furries. What's your opinion? DC first also comment on this about DG grade limbs, yay or nay?
Ooh.
For those that don't know, before the answer, digigrade versus plantigrade legs is whether or not the leg looks as though it has an extra bend in it to make it more realistically to some species.
I can do this. My suit is
don't die.
You see me? There we go.
Slogan DEFCON 201, don't die.
Digigrade. There.
The reason for that, of course, is because a lot of real animals walk more on their toes rather than on the flats of their feet.
Yeah.
So it's the fursuit equivalent of walking on your toes, I guess.
Yeah,
heels.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say heels, but yes.
Yeah, so I got padding in the front and my back and my legs to simulate the digigrade look. Yeah. So my light suit's actually separate from the fursuit. So every time I convert from day suiting to night suiting, I actually got to pull out the padding and put it inside my light suit first, then get everything on. So
Someone
that's a little bit of procedure.
asked,
You guys witnessed that earlier today when I first got on stream.
Suiting up for several hours.
Yeah.
So with all your trunks, what's the battery life?
So we got a question
sorry,
about.
sorry, 'cause I realized I clicked the wrong. Someone mentioned that you've mentioned before about suiting up for several hours at a time, so they're curious about what your battery life is like.
Generally, I try to shoot for 8 hours runtime any given time. So when I program it and I do a power analysis, I try to do it so it'll run on average for 8 hours, and at the very minimum 3 hours on full. Like say, because there's different modes, right? Different patterns. On the heaviest pattern, I aim for 3 hours minimum, and all the other modes are a little more lightweight. Like they're doing primary colors like RG and B. It makes it more efficient. So yeah, I try to shoot for 8 hours average. Sometimes I get 10 hours, depending on, because I have modes. They're always dark. Oh, not this one. This one's always dark. So if I'm always running around like this, I'm not using much power at all until I hit a button.
What about you, Sync?
Yeah, so I actually wear my stuff in a very modular fashion. Often at a convention, I'm only wearing my tail, right? I can, these suits don't all have to be, not everyone wears all the parts of their suit all the time. So my tail, and they're just using, these battery chargers. I can pick my capacity depending on how much weight I'm happy to carry around. But a small battery will keep my tail running for 8, 9, 10 hours. It depends on whether people play with it. Depends on whether they turn all the lights on full brightness. That all depends. The head, again, it depends on which battery pack I'm running. You see it at the moment. It's about mid brightness, and I'm pulling about an amp at 5 volts at the moment. Yeah, I'm actually plugged into a power supply right now. When this is June daylight, so everything's daylight visible, it's bright enough for that. It'll pull about 2 amps at 5 volts. So, you end up just doing the math to figure out how long it'll run for. And in my case, I just bring spare batteries. They're easy enough to carry around. You can get different sizes. So it really depends.
I just realized we were so enthralled by this that we're not running out of time per se, but I want to make sure there's at least a half an hour to an hour of just us hanging out. All of you people who are on can still stay and interact with everybody. But I just want to make sure, so I guess I'm going to do two remaining questions. One is, I'm trying to remember the first one. This always happens out of order. I'll go to the second one. So this is a question for all of you. I do know that, one of the reasons why furries are very much a staple of the internet, because a lot of it has really expanded through the internet. And then I know for a fact, for example, that with the introduction of, I don't even know if he's still alive, but there's a furry named Tiger Den, who is part of the Air Force that introduced a lot of internet stuff to early furry conventions. So I just wanted to ask in general, like your experience, whether it's a very long time or short time you've been in the furry community, like how much of it has changed over the time you've been involved in it?
Oh. You want to take this first? Thanks.
Well, it hasn't changed so much since I've been in there, because I've only been in there for about 5 years. So I've come into this kind of late. I do hear a lot about people talking about the old days. So, but yeah, I came in after the internet.
So it's an interesting question, right? Because there's different ways to measure change and on what scale. Definitely let's see. I've been in since 2013, 2014. I'm in. I got jumped in and everything, right? No, but as technology advances, so does the culture. And so like now everybody is on Telegram and Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok and all that, interacting. And whether they interact on all of them or just one of them and have their own sub-communities, the generational changes of how technology is used is carried forward into the fandom, and those users use those technologies to express their hobby. So, before I even had a phone, right, using AOL internet, dial-up, back when we had to use phone lines, you couldn't, call at the same time. Those that don't know, right? No, not even that old. The way that we interacted was, there's just art sites you would comment. The interaction would be purely transactional, kind of like Reddit, but in normal time. So like, oh, okay, I'll see your reply tomorrow. Not like, oh, okay, I'm going to sit here 10 seconds refreshing, pulling down on my phone because you're going to reply in 2 seconds because you don't get disconnected. It's advanced in that way, but as far as the culture and the community itself, it's kind of been a constant hub of just incorporating everybody's interests.
Yeah, exactly. I had the pleasure of speaking with a fur who shall remain nameless. I don't want to name drop him, but he's been in the fandom since the 80s, and he's telling us his stories, and it's very interesting, like what he has to say. But he says, yes, even from the 80s, it's changed dramatically because of the internet being invented, you know. And even for me, I've been in since 2012, and I've seen a lot of change. And maybe just because I'm getting like they call you gray muzzles, you know, like you're in there for so long, you're just a gray muzzle. You know, you're big kids these days, you know, get off my lawn. But I don't know. I just see young kids these days they seem to be unappreciated sometimes, and they're just new and they're just young and dumb, you know.
Okay,
Not saying they're dumb, but you know what I mean? Like I was there. I was young and dumb doing stupid shit.
Every kid's like that.
Yeah. Maybe as just older, I'm seeing this, but
yeah.
Back in my day, I had to paint on the wall to find another furry.
That's a symptom of getting old.
You know what really hit me actually, because of this whole COVID thing, you haven't been able to go to cons, so I've found VR chat, which is basically like fursuiting. It's a really expressive way to be a furry, and I'm meeting all these people who are like 18, 19 years old. I'm like, oh my god, am I the only one who's like, you know, twice their age, you know? I was like, it kind of hit me like a brick wall, you know, like, wow, I guess I'm old now.
Congratulations. Welcome to the club.
I've been going
personally
myself. And one of these days, we're going to drag one of our members down named Neo, who is the computer equivalent of that sort of thing, where like I think he was born like through dial-up, so he always it's fun. It's nice to see another community have like the same like we have the old guy that makes stories because we're like we have him too. He lives with us. I guess the last fun question I'll have, and then we're just going to open it up, and I want DC to speak on some stuff is what has like, because I always find this funny as someone who's done like mascotting and cosplay of the sort of reactions you get from people. So how has reactions when you've run into children been?
Very interesting. I do a lot of, I used to anyway. I feel like a little self-conscious. Look at my paws; they're getting worn. Like the connector's sticking right out. For Christ's sake, I need to fix that. I feel self-conscious about my suit, where to the point where I'd only wear it like at cons because nobody else gives a crap about a worn suit. But I've had this guy for 2013. I've been to festivals and everything. So anyway, kids, I used to be part of a public suiting group called NAMP. I still am. I haven't left. I don't volunteer as a handler, but I'm not gonna suit anymore. But if I get a brand new suit, which I am getting soon, by the way, I will probably go back and volunteer, because you know what? Nothing's more that fills your life better than seeing a child smile and laugh and just carry on when we're just doing stuff. Like when we're, you know, like we usually go to the zoo, local zoo here, and a whole bunch of us, like probably half a dozen to a dozen of us will come out in suit and have handlers. It's all professional. We're not supposed to talk. I keep forgetting. You know, sometimes I talk by accident. I make a noise, and they're like, "Oh my god, he talked!" You know, I was like, "Oh crap." But I don't know what it is. I'm so old, but I'm still almost energetic. I'd be the first one to climb that jungle gym and get on top of this crazy thing, and the kids just laughing their faces off, you know, and it's nothing but positivity, you know. And yes, you gotta understand, there's kids who want nothing to do with me. They get behind their parents' legs, you know, want nothing to do with them, and I see it right away. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like give you space. I'll leave some to me, you know. I'm not gonna like do anything weird, you know, like I'm not gonna like make you sudden movements, you know, because they're like terrified. And funny story, actually, at a Comic-Con, it wasn't a proper NAMP event. I was in suit in the grounds, like on the green outside of the college where they did Comic-Con, and this father and son, and his kid one of his kids was terrified of me, right? But this wasn't an official event. I was just me. I was just Emblade, whatever, right? And I asked the father, "Do you think you'd be okay if I just took my head off to show I'm a real person?" Because that's what scares me about suitor. If I don't know the suitor, I actually myself I kind of get weirded out sometimes. It's kind of weird. It's like a love-hate relationship. You know what I mean? Like you can't see my face, but but like I asked him, he's like, "Yeah, it's fine." So I knelt down, I took my head off, and the kid like immediately like lit right up, and he's like, "Oh my God, he's just a real person." And I actually gave him my head. He put my head on. I gave him my paws, and we got a photo op with him, and like, it was pretty awesome. So I mean, it's all really per person, per kid, And some people are just terrified because you can't see their face. That's the thing. You can't see the face. You don't know what they're doing, and I understand it. I get it. So that's just
I guess
how we are.
The last thing for everybody, because it's actually a question, is for both you and Blade and Search, and actually I'll include DEFCON FERS into this as sort of talking about what they might be doing in 2 months. What is your next sort of technological thing you're going to add to your suits, or what's in terms of DEFCON FERS? What's been the big tech stuff you've been adding in order to the next coming 2 months?
Oh, cool, sick. You go ahead. So I have a big one.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm continuing to add more sensors. I'm going to add, adding back in some of the biofeedback mechanisms, some of the different ways of communicating from other people, be it via the presence with the Bluetooth Low Energy and so on. So that's going to be the big thing. I am working on. So you probably noticed I'm wearing a normal T-shirt. I don't have the full bodysuit yet that M-Blade has. So working on the full bodysuit is also on the list of the things to do.
Robot thing if you want, or whatever you want.
Yeah, no, it's going to be the whole Tron type, a furry Tron, I guess would be one way of putting it. Of course, I got a bit more of a challenge than M-Blade because my character is black in color, so I can't shine the LEDs through the fur. Nothing gets through it. So you got to put holes in the fur to get through it. So,
yeah,
but yeah, and actually, you can just sort of mention one thing about the what happens when you see children thing from previously. The one thing I have found, and I've suited in public in Australia, Malaysia, Japan, America, Europe, and the reaction is universal, right? Most kids are like, "Oh, this is a walking, talking, character, which is cool," and you always get the ones that are terrified. But there's always joy, to be found. So that's the one thing that I found is very universal.
I guess M-Blade is gathering resources for what he's about to announce, unless I missed it.
Yep. Okay. I've been running this light suit, this current build. I call it V2 light suit because I consider the Costco one V1. So what I want to do is I want to, again, start with a whole new bodysuit. But I want to make it more high-tech. But I kind of praise myself for keeping it low-tech and simple, but I want to kind of baby step this a bit. But I have notes. What I want to add is I want to add a transceiver. It's still in the bag, but this is an NRF 24L01 transceiver. This is the long-range and low-noise amplitude one. So anyway, what do I do? Because I'm involved with stage lighting. I've also gotten into stage lighting. I do the lighting controls out the controller. I set them all up, I program them, I make them do cool stuff. So what I want to do is I can envision myself. I'll put my radio in my suit. I'll have a box at my console, and it'll just act like a MIDI controller, and I'll just latch into it through MIDI protocol or whatever. And basically from my suit with my accelerometers and all my buttons, instead of being behind the desk for the entire night doing the lights for everybody, I can still be on a dance floor dancing away, being glowy, and I can just orchestrate the light show from my suit. So that's what I want to do.
That sounds really freaking cool.
Very cool.
Right? I've also written a protocol a couple years ago. I called it Glow Link. It's not whatever, but it's basically automatically synchronizing of LEDs to each other. So it could be a collar, could be a fursuit, could be a pillow, it could be a tail, anything. So it uses the same NRF, same frequency, same channel, but they'll negotiate like who's master. So if you have like 20 of them, all of them will compare their numbers. They'll say, oh, okay, well, one is the lowest number, that means they're master. So I've developed this Glow Link system, included it inside Gem Raptor in 2018 when I did a rebuild as a future. So when my suit gets transceiver, I'm also going to include my glow link subroutines. And so in, say, at AutoCon, where Gem Raptor and I will come together, we can actually synchronize our lights together. So that's already in the works.
Cool.
So a lot of people are like, oh, how do you do synchronizing? I've already done it. I've written the protocol. It's already in a fursuit. I've offered to some other fursuits who want them in. I do a lot of different full body fursuit builds already. I've probably got like a good dozen under my belt by now. And not all of them have the glow link in it though, but I've offered it. And it's very easy to upgrade to. Just need to add the radio and a few more lines of code, and away we go.
That's really,
but that's
really
my
freaking
feature.
cool.
Automatically synchronizing LED objects, as you say. So,
I'm glad you asked this question because it actually reminded me I'm doing a really bad job plugging. So back to me, the headless voice over here that I don't have my camera on, but for DEFCON furs, we were planning to do quite a lot this year at DEFCON, of course, before it went into safe mode. And so now that it's online, we are actually organizing a online event as well to participate during that whole, I'm sure month-long thing of everybody doing something online. But we have some interesting things that we'll be announcing soon. We are still doing a badge this year. So those of you that have seen our contributions to Badge Life in the past, we had the Emblade. If you show the one on your chest, that's our 2018 badge. Yeah, and it goes boop when you tap the nose, and that was our first badge that we had a team of DEFCON furs that actually created that from scratch, had it fabbed, put together, and then in Sync's, if you could say something real quick, Sync.
I'm sorry.
There we go. Now it's on you. In the background underneath the poster, there's our 2019 badge, which was really cool. It was an RGB iteration and has faceplates on it, and the whole theme with that was Westworld. So there were different characters, and they were host badges. This year we'll be contributing something to Badge Life for those that like cool, shiny, blinky things and want to support a charity. Oh, that's the official DEFCON one there.
This one? Yeah, this is the 2019 one.
Yeah, that's our 2019 badge that Sync is holding up with the face. So stay tuned. Watch our Twitter at DC Furs. We'll be announcing both cool swag that we're doing for charity and also the online events that we'll be hosting later in a couple months here.
Awesome. I look forward to that. And Emblade and Sync, where can we find out more crazy shenanigans?
Check me out at Emblade_Akita on Twitter. I'll put it in the Discord or the Twitch.
I'm terrible at the social medias, so I'm SyncX on Telegram, and I guess that's about the only place I bother keeping up to date as far as the furry stuff goes.
People, which is my other.
Awesome,
where I do post my work in progress and stuff.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Thank you, DEFCON Furs as well as Emblade and Sync for presenting all of them. I think we were kind of transfixing what's going on. Before we continue on to the general meetup part, which will probably last a half an hour if we're really lucky to last for an hour. I do want to mention that someone in chat just came from DLive and said WTF. So all I can say is you're welcome and mission accomplished.
Keep DEFCON weird.
That's what we try to do here at DC201. But again, thank you for as a recap of all of our speakers. Thank you, Kinsey, for doing the audio engineering. Thank you, Echo, for talking about how transitioning works on a biological level. Thank you, Emblade, Sync, and Metavolt for detailing the nesting all that is DEFCON Furs
first. That's kind of separate, but yet in QueerCon. That's also in DEFCON, which is why DEFCON is usually so crazy and out of control. I also want to extend the thanks to DEFCON first, for if I remember correctly, and we can talk about this more. I think it was a couple of furs at DEFCON first that realized when they first went to the new Caesars, not the one that was built that they had to cancel.
The camera thing?
Yeah, they actually have facial recognition cameras, which scares other hackers, you know, we allow them more shades and other things to try to do that.
Yeah. So we got approached.
Yep.
Wow.
Every section of DEFCON is important. It's like a biological organism. Each part has a relevant thing. So before I leave it off to everyone, because I'm going to unmute everyone, we're going to go for how long this goes for. And again, thank you for putting up for technical difficulties. I will say that outside of technical difficulties and my incompetence, here's an in-joke. I think this probably ran a lot better than Rain first. So good job to all of us.
Wow. Okay. I see.
I skipped that year, thankfully.
We're less well behaved, but we somehow made this work. So before I open up to you, well, I have been working on stuff, and I've been doing a lot of working on stuff for DEFCON 201 in the future. I can say next month, which you probably will actually see on screen here intentionally if it pops up. But our next meeting, we meet normally 35 every month. Next month will be July 17th. We are looking into our usual place as an outdoor eating area, so you'll probably see us there with our new rig outdoors. So we'll have room for people to be in person, but we're still going to live stream everything. And most, if not all, of our speakers are going to be remoting in. And next month is, while we usually have some really awesome hackers like the ones we've had here, we every couple of months we always have one where we do something that's like Hacker AF, and we're going to post the lineup hopefully in the next 2 weeks about how Hacker AF this is. I'll give you guys a hint. We have someone who's been active development working on IRC3 that wants to show up and talk. So it's going to be a lot of cool, interesting things. And I'm going to kind of leave it up to anyone who wants to talk here, whether it's Cyril, Jack, Commander if he hasn't died yet, because we're going to torture him later and leave him alive, or anything else that I'm kind of at a loss because I thought most of the stream I'd be begging people to do donation stuff for the Trevor Project. We have like the best, craziest fans. So that just happened, and we're actually probably going to talk afterwards. Even though again, because we reached our goal, I'm going to get tortured in August. We might want to debate if we want to raise the end cap like $100 or $200 for the remaining amount of streams, because we still have a bunch of shows that we do. And Commander usually has a weekly show every Wednesday where he does crazy hacks, mainly retro stuff. This upcoming Wednesday I do my lockpicking show. G.I. Jack next Thursday is going to have his awesome show where he shows off his Arch Linux system, especially gaming on it. And then I have a second episode of Crypto Barons where I talk about cryptocurrency, except I actually talk about the technology behind cryptocurrency instead of the dumb snake oil business stuff that you usually see. So in me trying to just scream in the background because I'm going to check my food of how the heck did we reach $400 in one go. Thank you so much. That's going to help a lot of LGBTQ and questioning youth. I'm going to double check to see if everyone is muted or unmuted. I'm going to unmute everyone again and take it away. In the background.
So.
Well, I think I've been in soup for about 3 hours now. Time flies.
Drink water. Go drink water.
I should drink water. I kind of want to
drink some water too.
And join some people's video calls and just freak them out for a little bit. Who's actually online in the call right now? Let's see.
Let's go see what people are fucking doing on IRC because we're here. Let's ask Billy Ways. The DC 801 channel. If you guys IRC, we have DEFCON 201 on Freenode. DC 801 is the 801 guys in Utah. 562 used to have their own IRC servers to hang on there. We know Polak is a cool dude.
Yeah.
You can go pop him, see what the 801 guys to say.
Anyway, I'm gonna bid you guys goodbye. Thanks for
All right, have a good one.
See you later.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was really great. Put together a lot of good talks. I was enjoying listening to them before our little spiel here.
Yeah, you guys too. I mean, I like the suits and all the light up stuff. It's pretty cool. You know, it looks like you guys put some work into it. It's definitely like some serious like, party material.
If you scroll up on DC Fur's Twitter a little bit, you should see some retweets that I did of Protogen that's being made. It's really badass, and like it's the whole head is LEDs and doing expressions and reacting, and there's actually I believe probably like 6 or 7 that I've seen makers around the world that are making these with like full on embedded microprocessing of stuff, and of course memes. You can't have fursuits without memes, so one made a toaster. You put a little thread in it. But there's lots of cool things out there for tech in fursuits and otherwise.
Yeah. So yeah, I see that on your main Twitter. You have this big light up thingy, which is cool. Like I wish I had like the energy to like do stuff like this as opposed to just posting like dumb shit on Twitter. Sarah Sill. So
Yeah.
what do you think?
I don't know.
Right now,
Basically just been-
Go ahead. On you.
Oh, yeah. So, okay.
Ta-da! Sorry, I had to go get foods. Oh man.
Food's important.
Commander during the stream. I want to know this.
I don't know. But yeah, basically all I've been working on is a bunch of weird random video effects in HTML lately.
Oh, that's what I forgot. Shit, I was working on. Okay, so there is a patch for Slock that lets you do a background image. So it was originally written for Slock 1.2, and now we're on 1.4 where they kind of rewrote everything. So I ported the patch from Slock 1.2 to 1.4. And it's basically about 300 lines of C. It's fucking.
Jack, are you gonna do stuff on the next Archvile, or do you have something else planned for that? Because I know you've been really into C.
Okay, you know what? I'll get into it. I'll get into what's it called? Showing a little bit of C. What's the pirate's favorite programming language? Yes, it could be the R, but it's really the C.
We're not above our
Crickets, God.
Yeah.
Bomb.
I want to thank everybody. I'm going to have to drop here, but it was fun. Thank you guys for having
That was
me.
great.
We will provide
Oh, that joke really bombed.
for your amazing.
Tough crowd.
This is like we're always speechless when our guests come by, but like we're still going to be reeling about this episode because I'm just like absolutely truly mind-boggled by the amazing people that we had on here. So thank you all for presenting this craziness all over the interwebs that we're broadcasting. Thank you very much.
Well, and it's been great, and yeah, I have to see you all when DEFCON finally comes back in person.
This was the year I was supposed to actually go, like I actually segmented time and some investment in air travel. And I wanted to shut up some friends of mine that might run the New York DEFCON group about not going every year. And the 1 year I planned for if the world decides to end. So I told people, don't pressure me to join or terrible stuff happens.
You should just think about it positively. Think of all the money you're saving by not going to 5,000 conventions, especially all the furries out there that don't know how to adult and prioritize fun over.
Yes.
Although to be fair, we went from
ultra hacker summer camp that was starting with and ending in DEFCON. That's 2 weeks for essentially basically a month's worth of hacker conventions online. So that is the trade-off. But you know, it's easier for us to swing for that, and we will announce details of what we're doing for that later on. But no, I'll follow up with write-ups for everyone. Thank you for presenting all this. Thank you from all the way from Australia. I didn't realize you were.
I'm actually. Well, actually, I'm currently in Washington D.C.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Australia, but I'm. Long story. I'm here now.
I get it. I'm gonna be actually, we should bring that up to the Cyberpunk 2077 team because they apparently have a thing where you can like customize your own genitals in that game, but there's nothing of like that was an actual thing that was announced. But
okay.
Yeah, like they're going completely like gender neutral, like you can combine any sort of thing. But you would think that in like a cyberpunk future you would have like like animal grafts to your body, like actually putting it's discussed now, like actual cat ears on your head and stuff. So maybe that will be a DLC. I don't know, but I'll be disappointed if that's not in there at some point because it's like they're doing everything else in Cyberpunk.
Well, if you really want to be cyberpunk, it's take whatever you think is cool and then just hold up a giant monkey's paw. So I'm kind of writing a story on and off for the past couple of years. Where it's just kind of like everybody, like it just starts with like everybody. It's just like, you want this? I got a monkey's paw for you. You're gonna get it, but you're gonna hate it. So I think to me, I think that's like the real cyberpunk is, you kind of imagine how is this going to terribly go wrong if you just kind of let just capitalism and corporations deal with it. And that was like kind of like the whole point of cyberpunk. Imagine if we don't, you get the technology, but we don't fix the social issues that kind of drive like everything. So it's just one of those. It's just the whole. It's just writing a story where the whole point is if you identify with any of these characters or you think any of this is cool, if you read the sex scene and get a little bit aroused, you are probably scum. And it's the whole point. And it's one of those, like, you're in a sex scene and you're not like, it's supposed to be disgusting. It's just supposed to be like turn you off. Just to the point where you can't even enjoy sex in this world because it's just that fucking disgusting. But this is for like the type of person who stopped drinking scotch because it was too sweet, so they switched to bourbon because it was too bitter. It was bitter enough for me. So I see the world in very, very dark shades. So it's just kind of like writing is kind of like BDSM almost.
BSD, as I put it.
BSD, yes, because BSD is another form of BDSM.
Yep. Jails. It's funny because I completely forgot to ask during when we had DEFCON first and everything. I was actually kind of going to ask, and I don't know if you can ask this before you have to leave or something. I see all like in my head cannon, I've done this more in like full suited like I call them mascot costumes. Even if it's not like a mascot for a character, anything where you don't see any of your skin. Like even like the Spider-Man suit is considered a mascot character. Of like how many times have you ever like crossed your arms and kind of just sat there like you're looking and just fall asleep inside the suit or like nod off for a couple of minutes because I've noticed that when I wear full body suits that when you do that people think that they're actually paying attention to you while you're just like dead asleep or looking at something else or fidgeting inside the suit and like your pockets and get things. So I was just kind of curious if I'm the only person that has that.
So it depends on the suit. So some suits have very restrictive vision, so you kind of have to move your head to where you're actually looking. My suit head here is actually very good with vision. I'm looking straight at the camera, but I'm actually I can be doing this and I'm still looking at the camera because I can turn my eyes in ways that you can't see because of course my eyes are behind the LED matrix. So it actually kind of depends on the suit. Because these suits tend to be fairly tight-fitting, so what you're doing with your hands is generally fairly obvious. But yeah, so it depends. But no, certainly there's the whole. I'm just going to close my eyes and relax for a bit, while I'm looking like I'm paying attention. It does happen from time to time.
Seriously, I actually want to grab something that I am going to show off because I can't remember if I showed this off last. Don't worry, I'll be fully clothed. To the disappointment of our watchers, I will be fully clothed. But I was wondering, do you have any updates?
Extra. He'll start taking stuff off.
We have to decide if we're going to raise the cap. I still want to do one where I start off naked and everyone pays to put the clothes back on me, but we'll see how that works.
Anyway.
Sarah, do you I missed if you were working on anything. Do you have any updates, or do you want to show off again the TV thing you were building with the MagFest?
I don't really have anything to show off right now.
Okay.
I was actually gonna head out because I'm like nodding off, sitting.
Yeah.
Not boring. We've had a long day. And I want to thank you again, sir, for all of the technological work. This is a compromising position. Technological work you have done while we're trying to raise the stream on stuff. So once again,
Hey!
yes,
Good job.
Thank you. Again, everything is either a technicality with the machine or my end. So don't worry about that.
All right.
It's in my room. Hang on.
Okay. Later.
I think I'm going to drop there. It's about 10.
Yeah, I think I will. I've said it 3 times. I think I will actually drop off as well. Take care, y'all.
Take care.
Oh no, okay. What is? Okay,
Oh,
what are you
yeah.
showing? Okay, what are you showing? We got to see this.
I think if Commander doesn't wake up, we'll probably just end the stream. But just want to do a heads up. Thank you everyone who's watched so far, and thank you for the people or person I should kind of say who donated, because that's still I can't wait to go back to the Twitch video and get the clip of that reaction. But this is not going to be on our show on Wednesday, but I do have something I'm going to eventually show off here, and I guess I'm the only one left here, so I will go over to who's talking up. That's not how that works. One of these things.
There we go. Made it easy. Turned off the camera.
Yes. No, I think it might work regardless. Let's see. Who's talking? Active cam. There we go. And then I guess I'll air off myself. Not in that way. But the thing I have been working on is this won't be on the upcoming Sunday Master of Unlocking unless something crazy happens. But I will show this off probably next month. This took forever to come in the mail. This came all the way from China. These are tubular lock impressioners of 3 different sizes. Because the annoying orange and Winnie the Pooh can't agree on anything. I literally ordered this back in January and it came to in last month. And in addition to that, this is a completely clear Chicago-style tubular lock, and this is the key that goes with it. So what I've been able to do is not only kind of mechanically, and there's a lot of glare here, but mechanically how a tubular lock actually works. But I also have the if I can pull one out, I'm not going to do it on air, but at least I don't think I can do it on air. Pull this out. Is you take your impressioner, and I'm actually going to show how to do the impression with the impressioner. There's a mouthful. Impression with the impressioner. And I'm also going to eventually show off how you can actually get Chicago-style tubular locks manually normal pin tubular lock. So just wanted to do a little preview of that, since it's always in the mystery case that you see on my desk when I do these live broadcasts. So anyhow, since I'm the only person left, and I have an feeling when I end this, everyone's going to strangle me. Thank you all for tuning in on this again. My apologies before of the mouse cursor away. My apologies before for all the technical errors. We did test the GoToMeeting system, which seemed to pretty much fine. I just forgot a couple of things, but we had an issue with OBS because I didn't know there were 2 graphics cards in here, but thankfully Sir came in and does what he normally does, and did the Spider-Man to save the day. So thank him for that. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for all the people who donated. I can't believe we've already reached halfway through presenting all this stuff. We reached our $400 goal for the Trevor Project. That helped out a lot of LGBTQ youth, as well as especially people colored such as black trans people. I should really probably just do this directly instead of the GoToMeeting. Actually, give me one second. I'm actually going to do the switch around for this, and we'll see what's going on. So you'll probably hear my voice, but not here. Don't worry, we're going to end the stream soon. I just wanted to see if we can do this change. So I'm going to attempt to exit that. Everyone's cheering for Australia here. So I'm trying to remember how you exit out of the meeting here. Settings. Because I am not the smartest person here at DC201, if you couldn't tell. That is an understatement. So yes, there's a way to. I think I might just close everything and that just ends the entire meeting. So here we go. So yes, we're going to turn this off now. I'm going to try to switch the cam. Before we do that, I just want to thank everyone watching this. So if it just cuts off, that means we're done with the meeting. But I'm going to try to switch this out. So let's do this. Aha! See, this is how this goes. So now what I'm going to add in, and I also realize where probably the echo came from because I'm dumb. But let's do this. We are going to switch this to a video capture device. And let's see. Custom resolution. If I remember correctly, one of these is the ones that actually works. Hang on. So now I'm super huge, and then we're gonna do this really sloppy. Actually, move this all the way down. This is how we normally do the setup here. I'm actually going to kill the display capture. See, you learn something every day. Bloop. And until I futz with it, that's how we're gonna get to it. So anyhow, once again, normally I'd be posting the links in chat for like donate and stuff, but everyone blew it out of the park. I also can't wait to check see how many people do this because there's a lot of people. And so thank you all who showed up, asked questions. Thank you for who donated. Last donation was Transil. I think you pronounced her name. $115. She did the exact. She hated. They. I should say because I know they hate me so much that they did the exact math calculation to exactly reach our goal. That's the type of fans we have here at 201. But thank you for seeing a glimpse of what hacking is sort of like in New Jersey, as well as hearing it with all the fireworks going on. So thank you for all who donated to the Trevor Project above. Thank you for all who tuned in. Thank you all who shared. And yes, the Adam Savage cool and shoot. If you want to find out more stuff that we do, I'm going to type it here in chat. Let's put HTTPS. And the sad part is, I think the only thing that we truly didn't get working is we're supposed to also feature some other videos from other groups, but I will do shout-outs on here, and we'll feature them on our Twitter later, or maybe on our next live. Maybe on my next live stream from Master Unlocking, I'll make up for it. If you want to know more stuff, we just post in our website, which is DEFCON201.org. That is DEFCON, DEFCON201.org. You can go there, that has our meeting details. Click on news. We're gonna have a post again about our shows. Hopefully, we're gonna make a section of the website. I can hear Sarah Cell groaning right now. That will actually list all the live stream shows we're gonna be doing from now to time. The next show that's gonna happen, that's not normal meeting, is Master of Unlocking, which is my show teaching about lockpicking and lock sport. Physically, you're picking locks with tools, or bypassing them. And that will happen at 8 p.m. on Sunday. These are all Eastern Standard Times. Next week should be another episode of Hack Commander, where Commander probably heard briefly on our stream, will do various retro hacks that are really cool. Next week also, it's a lot of shows. Next week will be, if I remember correctly, Jack's fourth episode. Third episode of Vile Linux Perspective, where he tours amazing custom Linux machine. And next Saturday is going to be a second episode of Crypto Baron, where I talk about cryptocurrency, except about the technology behind the cryptocurrency. You've probably seen Sarah Cell is working on a show that is going to take a little bit to get running, but you guys I think are going to really love what you see, because he's a really awesome dude. Anyhow, that is our meeting. Next month, we always meet third Friday of the month. So next month's meeting will be on July 17th. And that meeting is going to be partially in person. So if you're in Jersey City or New York, we should, and we're going to confirm it first, we should be able to set up because they already have outdoor era spaces where a limited amount of people, it's going to be RSVP'd, can come out in the outside area, and we'll have like a little projection system and stuff, and you'll be able to talk and interact with us with proper social distancing because of COVID. Even though we're going to be meeting in person next month, we're still doing this live stream, and most, if not all, of the people who are going to speak next month, which I'll have details on that soon, are going to be really awesome, and they're all going to be remoting. So if you're watching on stream, you're not going to get any different experience than meeting in person. But if you do want to meet in person, I'll bring the physical lock picking kit so you can try to with your own hands and stuff. That's something that we're going to do. So we hope you join our next meeting in July. Stay tuned to our future shows. Stay tuned to our upcoming announcements. Thank you once again for attending and watching the stream. Thank you for donating to the Trevor Project, especially Trans Girl Punk Club, who donated $1,500 for a good cause, and also probably just to spite me, as they do. I take that in stride. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for putting up with all the difficulties. A lot. Thank you. If you like what you see, you can follow us right here on Twitch. You can also follow us again on DLive, YouTube. We have a Tor instance of YouTube, so you can view this through and Mixer, which is our newest thing. So hi Microsoft overlords, and stop supporting Ice Microsoft. Okay, you're probably gonna get banned from that now. Anyhow, this is a taste of hackers from New Jersey. We're going to end this with some music and then sign off. I hope to see you for Masters of Unlocking. Please follow us and check us out our website. I can't think of any more things to say, so thank you for attending our meeting. Rainbow Tables, our June meeting. Dirty Jersey represent Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter, Happy Pride, and Dirty Jersey represent peace.